Leave it to people wandering on Google Earth to stumble upon the world's newest and weirdest places ever. Like this mysterious pyramid discovered in Antarctica. Soon enough, the internet blew up with all sorts of theories regarding this unusual shape. Could it be a sign from a different life form? Is this pyramid indeed natural, or is it man-made? For starters, it's not the first time we've discovered a pyramid in the Antarctic. The first one was observed by the British Antarctic expedition in the 1910s and kept secret for a long time. Its discovery being kept hidden only added to the mystery. A second such structure was discovered in 2016, which further increased the interest in the matter. The mystery was soon enough deciphered by scientists. These formations are just mountains. They're located near the Ellsworth Mountains, a range over 250 miles long, so they're just mountain peaks that have broken through the ice sheet. As for their particular shape, it's just a coincidence. Pyramids are found throughout nature. The Matterhorn in the Alps and Mount Ballenstinder in Iceland, for example, are quite similar in terms of shape. As for the official name of these peaks, they're called nunataks, or peaks of rock peeking through a glacier or an ice sheet. Antarctica has way more incredible features, like the fact that it's home of 60 to 90% of the world's fresh water. That's because its ice sheet is the biggest on our planet, stretching across 5.4 million square miles. I'll spare you the calculations, but that leaves only 1% of the continent ice-free. Antarctica's ice reaches 2.7 miles thick at its deepest point, meaning half the height of Mount Everest. Should it ever melt completely, our sea levels would rise to roughly 200 feet. It wasn't always this cold, though. At some point in our planet's history, Antarctica had some average temperatures as the city of Melbourne has today. It took a lot of research, but scientists figured out that Antarctica's temperatures could have reached up to 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Sure, that was 40 to 50 million years ago, but if you think about it, it was at the same time when dinosaurs roamed our Earth. Time is also different on this icy continent. All the lines of longitude that help us calculate different time zones merge into a single point at the South Pole. Here, there are 6 months of daylight in the summer, followed by 6 months of complete darkness during the colder season. So, scientists working here stay, on average, in the same time zone they've come from. The Blood Falls aren't a chapter of a thriller movie. They are merely a series of waterfalls located in one of the driest regions of Antarctica. They emerge from an underground lake filled with a special type of bacteria. These little organisms use sulfates as fuel instead of sugars, which makes them very intriguing for scientists. The water contained in this lake is so full of iron that it basically just rusts when it meets air. So, the reddish color of the waterfall also gives it its trademark name. The megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there are no megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably because the gigantic creature was adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. If you plan to visit Antarctica by boat someday, just know you might not get there on a non-metallic boat. The hull of your transportation device must be made of either steel or aluminum to withstand the harsh weather conditions here. Antarctica isn't home to a lot of bugs. In fact, there is only one true species of insect that calls this place home. It's a wingless midge called Belgica antarctica. This fly is so tiny that it only reaches 0.08 to 0.23 inches long, but it's still the Antarctic's largest terrestrial animal. A lot of Antarctic fish also come with an antifreeze substance in their blood. They don't necessarily need it for protection against the cold temperature, but mostly against touching ice. These antifreezes are made up of large glycoprotein molecules. They surround any small ice crystals that may form, making sure they don't spread through the animal's tissues, which could cause a lot of damage. They also create a sort of small pillow blocking the sharp ice crystals, so they're less likely to cause any pain. It also doesn't rain a lot here on this icy continent, but one amazing meteorological quirk of Antarctica is that it's full of diamond dust. This dust is basically small ice crystals that pop out of humid air close to the Earth's surface. Think of it like an icy fog. As they flow through the air and get touched by sunlight, they begin to sparkle, making visitors here feel like they're surrounded by diamonds. It's probably the last place you'd want to go into labor, but in 1978, the first person was born here ever. Emil Marco Palma was its name, and ever since, 10 other people have been born here in Antarctica. There's a lake on this icy continent that is so full of salt, it makes it impossible for it to freeze over, even if temperatures can go as low as 5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because pure water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Water that has salt in it, or any other substance for that matter, will freeze, but at a way lower temperature. That lower temperature is adjustable depending on the substance itself and the amount that has been placed into the water. Antarctica was the last official continent to be discovered. It remained completely unseen until the 1820s. But it took another 20 years to confirm it was actually a continent and not just a group of icy islands. Just because it's really cold here doesn't mean you can't go on a date here. One December night, an American scientist that was posted in Antarctica logged into a dating app simply out of curiosity. He was certain no other profiles would show up, but to his surprise, he found someone soon enough. Another researcher who was stationed just 45 minutes away, by helicopter of course. They eventually got together and went on the first date in Antarctica ever recorded. Apart from ice, this continent has something else way more abundantly than any other piece of land on Earth: meteorites. If we look at the research done by scientists, meteorites have equal chances of reaching any place on our planet. However, once they go through our atmosphere, the situation is a bit more complex. That's because different climates on our planet, like the humid ones found near the jungle, have a lot of moisture and oxygen, which will corrode most meteorites. The climate in Antarctica is really dry, so the possibility of meteorites corroding is little to none. More so, it's way easier to spot these rocks on the icy white surface of this area than in any other place on Earth. If you're not scared of the cold, you'll surely freak out when you hear about the winds here. That's because Antarctica is for the most part the windiest place on Earth. Wind speeds have been reported here to reach even 200 miles per hour.
Everyone loves a good landmark. The Roman Colosseum, the ancient city of Machu Picchu, the Giza pyramids. But have you ever wondered how it once looked? Way back in the days when they were built? Or even in the time they were covered in ivy and forgotten by humanity? Buckle up, because we're heading on a time travel adventure to the world's greatest archaeological sites. Our voyage begins in South America, deep inside the Peruvian mountains. Behold, the city of Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is a monument to the ingenuity and power of the Inca civilization. During its prime, the Inca civilization stretched 2,500 miles along South America's coastline from modern-day Ecuador all the way down to Chile. And Machu Picchu was located at the heart and center of it. The historic site was constructed at around 7,000 feet above sea level, more or less around 1450 BCE. The gated city consisted of around 150 buildings made of stone. The Incas managed to build temples, houses, and even a complex aqueduct system to irrigate the entire town. And yes, they did all that without the help of wheels or any instrument made of iron. The housing model is somewhat similar to stone houses we see nowadays, with the difference that the Incas didn't use any cement to stick together the blocks of stone. Yet, they fit seamlessly on top of each other. Not only that, the Incas must have developed a rudimentary yet effective anti-earthquake technology, since in the event of a quake, the rocks would shake without falling out of place. If Machu Picchu had been built today, it would have cost over $70 million to finish the entire thing. The purpose of the site is still a mystery to many historians. Theories suggest that it could have been built as a ceremonial site, a safety base for the Inca people, or even a retreat for royalty. What we know for a fact is that in the 16th century, 100 years after Machu Picchu was built, its population abandoned it, with tree roots taking over the majority of the site and keeping it hidden from humankind for over 4 centuries. It wasn't until the 20th century that the world was reintroduced to Machu Picchu when a Peruvian farmer led Yale University professor Hiram Bingham III to visit the site. Since then, Bingham and many other explorers dedicated their lives and research to studying the archaeological wonder of Machu Picchu. Now, for the next stop on our time-traveling vehicle, the city of Pompeii in Italy. Pompeii has crowded our collective imagination for many years. The eruption of the Mount Vesuvius volcano in 79 AD and the destruction of an entire city is hopefully not something that will happen again. But I bet you're wondering, what did Pompeii look like on its last day? It took 18 hours for Pompeii's streets, markets, houses, and forums to be buried under millions of tons of volcanic ash. Thanks to some clever scientists, we discovered that the lava and ashes that covered Pompeii on its very last day actually helped to freeze the city in time. Different from ice, the cloud of ashes did not preserve the city intact, but as the items disintegrated over 2,000 years, they left voids under the earth. Archaeologists found that if they filled these voids with plaster, the shape of the buried city would soon reveal itself. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, it was nothing like the bustling city of 12,000 people that had existed for many years before the fateful eruption. Pompeii was a vibrant and rich municipality. The site's ruins revealed that many areas of Pompeii boasted impressive houses, some with balconies, which was a sign of great wealth at the time. And, believe it or not, even some artwork survived the eruption. Archaeologists found well-preserved frescoes and murals of mythological creatures, all indicating that members of the high society lived there. Ruins show the city even had thermal baths and showers made with luxurious materials. Oh, and apparently, the people of Pompeii had amazing teeth. Yes, archaeologists could see even that tiny level of detail from the plaster molds they recovered from underground. Still in the Italian territory, we find one of the world's biggest tourist attractions, the Roman Colosseum. It was built as an amphitheater during the reign of Emperor Vespasian, around 70 AD. It wasn't until 80 AD that Vespasian's son, Emperor Titus, inaugurated the Colosseum. The monument was something to behold, with 157-foot-tall walls, over 80 entrances, and the capacity to host 87,000 people. All social classes and groups were welcome at the Colosseum, and this partly explains why it flourished for so many centuries. During the decline of the Roman Empire, around the 6th century AD, the Colosseum started being neglected and abandoned. The monument was looted, and some of its columns and stones were used to build infrastructure elsewhere. Only 1/3 of the original Colosseum still remains, and if it's big now, imagine what it once was. Greece was home to one of the world's largest empires. At the height of this empire, literally and historically speaking, more or less 2,400 years ago, the Greeks built a citadel known as the Acropolis. The Acropolis, which is composed of historical buildings, is considered to be one of the biggest landmarks of Western civilization to date. Tourists that visit the capital city of Athens today may be faced with yellowish and broken pillars of the Parthenon standing way up high in one of the city's hills. But way back when it was built, between 447 and 432 BCE, the imposing and majestic Parthenon was purely white, as the entire monument was built with gleaming white marble. The statues inside were made of gold. The Parthenon is a 23,000 square foot temple held up by 69 marble columns. The largest blocks of marble are massive, weighing around 10 tons each. And the most surprising fact is that the marble didn't come from Athens, but from a nearby site that stood 10 miles from the Acropolis, known as Mount Pentelicon. Historians intrigued by where the primary material for building the Acropolis came from found tiny and big blocks of marble all scattered around the floor of Mount Pentelicon. There was also a paved road that the Greeks had built to carry the rocks around. But perhaps the most impacting monument of all times is located at the heart of the Middle East, outside the Egyptian city of Cairo. The pyramids are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Giza Pyramid Complex was built as a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu around 4,500 years ago. Between 20 to 30,000 people took part in the construction process. It's composed of 3 pyramids. The massive monument is made out of approximately 8,000 tons of granite and over 550,000 tons of mortar, which gives it the appearance it has today. Would you believe me if I told you that the pyramids didn't always look like this? Far from it. They were shiny white with a golden triangular tip at the top. This is because the Egyptians used over 6 million tons of limestone to cover the entire rocky, step-like structure, all so that they could gleam white under the unforgiving sunlight of Egyptian skies. The Pyramid of Khufu remained the tallest structure on Earth made by humans for over 3,800 years. It was the only 8-sided pyramid in Egypt and was believed to align with Orion's belt. It's considered to be the most aligned construction facing north. In 1979, it was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Let's head on down to the Indian city of Agra to quickly visit the Taj Mahal. You may know it as the Taj, but it can also be called by its more endearing name, a teardrop in the cheek of time. The Taj took over 22 years to build and was commissioned in 1632 by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a declaration of love for his third and favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. It was made with ivory white marble, and amazingly, due to tight conservation, it still remains very similar to what it was when it was built. I think all this talk of landmarks got me thirsty for some traveling. What about you? Tell us in the comments below if you've ever visited some of these sites, or which interesting landmarks you'd add to this video.
So what comes to your mind when you hear the word Antarctica? Most likely, cold, snow, ice, and penguins. Yet, this is one of the least explored regions in the world that hides many strange and unique things. Check them out. You don't have to go to Antarctica to see this weird thing. All you need to do is open Google Earth and move to one of the southernmost islands of Antarctica, King George Island. Recently, internet users have noticed a large and pretty strange cave entrance there. Where does this wide, dark passage lead? People started making suggestions. It's the entrance to a secret base or some laboratory. This is the part of the spaceship that crashed there thousands of years ago. This is the door to the ancient city of Antarctica. Perhaps there's a giant rock mountain with an ancient cave beneath all this snow and ice. Well, there's some ideas. Users have calculated the approximate dimensions of this cave. It might be about 74 feet high and 250 feet wide. You could hide a Boeing passenger jet in there. Nature probably created this entrance. This is a logical explanation, but there are 2 strange factors. First, take a look at the foot of the mountain. It seems that there are steps there. They're dark in color, as if they're made of stone. And if you look closely, you can notice something similar to human footprints. Has anyone entered this cave? Or maybe someone is still living there now. The second oddity is the disappearance of the mysterious finding. For the first time, people noticed it in a Google Maps snap in 2007. Then the entrance disappeared. Then it reappeared a few years later. After that, it vanished. And in 2022, people saw it again. Perhaps old snow melts, a new layer falls, and then the wind blows it away and the cycle repeats. But the alleged steps leading deep into the cave make one doubt the natural origin of this tunnel. You can easily find the coordinates on the internet and visit the cave via Google Earth. You might see something there and tell the world. There's another strange thing people discovered with the help of Google Earth. In 2020, one user found a strange object that looked like a giant ship 100 miles off the coast of Antarctica. It was covered with ice and snow and lying on its side. It looked like a cruise ship. You could notice the windows, the deck, and the bridge. But not all people agreed with this. Some claimed it was a spaceship. Others said it was some kind of secret building. The user who first noticed the ship stated that its size was about 400 feet, which is the perfect length for a passenger vessel. But what is this ship doing in such a remote place in the middle of a glacier? How did it get here? Who was its captain? No one has found the answers to these questions yet. In 2016, people using Google Earth discovered a photo of an unknown sea monster floating off the coast of Antarctica. This creature resembled a giant squid with a length of about 200 feet. This is slightly shorter than 3 train cars. Just imagine this kraken swimming in Antarctica's dark, icy waters and dragging to the bottom everything it meets on its way. Maybe it's the great and terrible Chulu, or one of its offspring. You will quickly notice this blood-red waterfall among Antarctica's endless, dazzling white landscapes. Don't worry, it's not blood. For many centuries, the waterfall has been painting snow in a bright red color. The stream flows straight out of a white iceberg. Let's look inside and find out what's happening there. Millions of years ago, there was a small crystal-clear pond, but then a glacier formed around it. A thick layer of ice and snow blocks sunlight, heat, and oxygen access. For millennia, the reservoir remained in this cold vacuum. But at one point, the water made a hole in the icy wall and broke out. When this salty water comes into contact with oxygen, it immediately turns scarlet or rusty. Antarctica is the only place where you can find such a unique natural phenomenon. One of the driest places on Earth is located in Antarctica. It's one of the most lifeless deserts in the world, the McMurdo Dry Valleys. In this desert, you won't see the scorching sun, hot sand, and cacti. A desert means a place with a lack of precipitation and life. The McMurdo Dry Valleys meet these parameters. But this place is also unique for Antarctica, since you won't find glaciers there. Despite the frost, ice can't form in the desert because it hasn't rained for millions of years there. It also never snows. A strong wind coming from the mountains reaches speeds up to 200 miles per hour. It would be difficult for you to stay on your feet there. The wind is filled with moisture. It heats up and evaporates all the liquid and snow in the desert because of its high speed. Only dry air reaches the ground. But you can find several lakes there. They don't freeze, only thanks to the high concentration of salt. The water is so salty that large life forms can't develop there. But scientists have found microscopic organisms near the lakes. 20 million years ago, Antarctica was filled with swamps, trees, and swarming with insects and animals. But now, it resembles the surface of Mars, literally. Scientists and astronauts are exploring such regions as the McMurdo Dry Valleys, since the natural conditions there are similar to those on the Red Planet. So, before you go to Mars, you can practice living in similar places on Earth. Also, scientists discovered an underwater world in the Antarctic filled with hundreds of amphipods, crustacean animals similar to shrimp. Wait a minute, it happened in the Antarctic? But the McMurdo Dry Valleys are located in Antarctica. Well, the words are very similar, but what is the difference? Oh, and don't forget the Arctic. The Antarctic is the region in the southernmost part of Earth that houses the continent of Antarctica, and the Arctic is another land altogether. They have the same natural conditions, frost, ice, and snow, but they're located in different parts of the planet. The Arctic is at the North Pole, Antarctica is at the South Pole. Now, back to the discovery. Scientists put forward theories that the ice of the Antarctic hides a vast network of freshwater rivers and lakes. And in 2022, they found a new ecosystem. Researchers explored the Antarctic Ross Ice Shelf and its underwater rivers. This is a massive piece of ice floating in the ocean. A team from New Zealand used a special drilling rig equipped with a hot water supply to drill a hole 1,640 feet deep. That's more than the height of the Empire State Building. Then, they lowered some video cameras and saw thousands of crustaceans swimming in different directions. So it seems they're very unorganized. In the waters of the Antarctic, you can also meet some of the scariest creatures on the planet. These are sea spiders. They got this name because they resemble land spiders, but they're actually a species of marine arthropods. And unlike land spiders, those in the ocean are much larger. They look like 8 strong legs without a body. One such spider can be a dinner plate in width. Some of them have no eyes and have proboscises instead of jaws. Sea spiders are poorly studied because they live in deep, cold waters. Antarctica hides many little-known animals. There are long tunnels in its glaciers leading to scary darkness. On this cold continent, people have found the remains of giant dinosaurs and other ancient creatures, such as the ancestors of modern ducks. Many underground rivers and lakes hide unexplored wildlife. Even the ice here can be weird. Take a look at these striped icebergs. They have blue, black, green, and turquoise shapes. The color depends on the conditions of the water during freezing. For example, green lines appear because of algae, blue ones form when the water freezes too quickly. Okay, I'm freezing. Time to go thaw somewhere warmer. Hawaii. Yeah.
We're in Siberia. It's so cold here that freezing gusts of wind are burning your face. All that white snow seems to be blinding you. This place resembles Antarctica because of the permafrost. Recently, a group of scientists researched one of the local rivers. With the help of a drilling rig, they extracted several samples of frozen soil. The scientists were shocked to find living creatures inside the ice. Later in the laboratory, they realized that the creatures were microscopic multi-celled organisms known as deloid rotifers. These creatures looked like little worms. Scientists knew that these worms could live in frozen conditions for up to 10 years. But the age of the rotifers found in the ice was about 24,000 years. And after defrosting, they began to reproduce, as if they had been sleeping for several hours, not thousands of years. Further analysis showed that these organisms could stay frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. The rotifers might have lived during the time when people didn't invent the wheel yet. And this isn't their only superpower. Deloid rotifers are among the most radioactively resistant animals on Earth. They can survive in places where there's no oxygen and water. They can also stay alive in areas with high acidity and can live without food and water for a long time. By the way, these are not the only creatures that are known for living for thousands of years. Particular types of moss and some microorganisms are also almost immortal. Nematodes, also called roundworms, are some of the most adaptive varieties of worms in the world. Imagine the Eiffel Tower standing tall and proud. And now, let's make it 10 times higher and place it underground. Exactly at this depth, many thousands of feet under the surface, scientists discovered these creatures. There's no sunlight and almost no air in this place. And since it's much closer to Earth's core than the surface of our planet, the temperature here is higher than in the middle of the hottest desert. Millions of tons of soil above create insane pressure. But all this couldn't prevent life from developing here. When roundworms run out of air, food, or when the temperature becomes too high, they get into a unique state of stasis, or deep hibernation. In this mode, the worm's metabolism slows down, and almost all the processes in their bodies stop. The creatures can sleep for a very long time, and only wake up when the environment becomes more livable. By the way, you don't have to go so deep underground to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They can live in hot springs, deserts, high in the mountains, among the harsh ices of Antarctica, or inside animals and humans. Our next invulnerable creatures are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These are microscopic, 8-legged invertebrates closely related to arthropods. It's impossible to see them with the unaided eye. But a conventional microscope will allow you to see tardigrades in detail. They look like minuscule bears. They're called water bears because they need a thin layer of water around their bodies at all times. It's necessary to prevent dehydration. Tardigrades have been found in all kinds of environments, from ocean depths to sand dunes. They're incredibly robust thanks to their unique organism structure. Yeah, they look soft, but their body is covered with a tough cuticle. This coating resembles the exoskeletons of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed their old layer of the cuticle when they need to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The bears can survive at a temperature that's almost 3 times as cold as the temperature in the ice of Antarctica. Heat doesn't harm them either. They have been proved to survive at the temperature that makes water boil. Also, water bears are not afraid of radiation and high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of the strongest metals, but these creatures can withstand pressures 6 times greater. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field. This is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't need this protection. They can go into near-Earth orbit and come back unharmed, all thanks to a protein protecting their DNA from ionizing radiation. Like other immortal organisms, water bears can fall into a state of cryptobiosis. Tardigrades pull their head and legs inside their bodies and fall asleep. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, or experiencing a lack of oxygen, they will remain in this barrel form until the situation improves. So those are microscopic organisms and microbes that can only be seen through a microscope. But how about something bigger? Meet ironclad beetles. They live in the southwestern US and Mexico. These insects can not survive high temperatures, live without oxygen, or in conditions of increased radiation. But their shells are so tough that they can only be pierced with a drill or hammer. Their durable exoskeletons are made of a special substance, chitin. It can also be found in the armor of crabs or shrimp. And still, the chitin of the ironclad beetle is so durable that it allows this creature to withstand the impact of a car moving at high speed. In times of danger, they can hide their whiskers and strong legs in special recesses in their shell. Other animals can't bite through the armor, so they spit the beetle out and leave to look for lunch somewhere else. As soon as the danger disappears, the bug stretches out its legs again and goes about its business. Also, the armor saves the beetles from dehydration, which is very useful in hot areas of Mexico and the southwestern US. Inside the exoskeleton, they can store moisture. In other words, these bugs can absorb water whenever they find it and transport this liquid inside themselves. The next creatures are incredibly fragile, but they know how to survive in places where almost no other animals can live. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can notice a pit. This is a mine leading deep underground. The air on the surface of our planet usually contains around 20% oxygen, but in the mine, it's only 10%. Inside the cave, the air also has an increased content of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. People can't breathe there without an oxygen tank. We can probably say that the water and air there are poisoned. Almost no animals would be able to survive here. Still, 48 species of living organisms have been found in this cave. 33 of them are newly discovered species. And they aren't the only microbes or bacteria that can't be seen without a microscope. Something bigger lives here. Strange white snails crawl over the walls of the mines. Transparent shrimp and a bunch of unknown kind of leeches swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and creepy white spiders run on the ground. And they all have been growing here for almost 5 million years. You might notice a water scorpion and another unidentified species of this animal. It doesn't look like its relatives living in hot sands or tropical forests. No living creature here looks ordinary at all. All animals are either white or transparent. They have no eyes, but are equipped with long paws and antennae whiskers that help them navigate in this dark space. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen the air contains. But the number of living organisms is increasing. The air is filled with methane and carbon dioxide. All the inhabitants of this cave have never seen the light of the sun and have never gone out of the darkness. It seems impossible to survive in such conditions where plants don't produce oxygen. The answer to the question of their survival is hidden in a small lake. The surface of the water is covered with strange foam. If you look closely, you can see that this white substance is alive. It resembles soft, wet paper that is easy to tear. The thing is billions of living organisms, bacteria called autotrophs. There's much more carbon dioxide in the cave than there is outside, and these bacteria, like plants, absorb it. But they don't do this with the help of photosynthesis, which means they don't need sunlight. They use water for chemosynthesis. What these bacteria secrete is food for other bacteria, and these other bacteria are food for bigger creatures. A unique food cycle that you can't find anywhere else on the planet only exists here.
The ancient Indian texts mention beautifully decorated chariots or entire palaces called vimanas that could take off and, in a matter of seconds, fly away as far as space. Some people believe these vimanas only existed in Indian mythology, But it's also possible that they were based on a real technology that had been lost over the centuries. According to the Vedas, ancient Indian religious texts, there was the elephant vimana with several engines and many other types named after animals and birds. There was one for local travel, one for visiting different countries, and one for traveling to the moon and various planets. They could develop a great speed. One vimana had the superpower of invisibility. Another one was shaped like a sphere and was built on the winds produced by Mercury. This vimana was said to generate an enormous ray like the sun and make noise like the storm's thunder. All the vimanas were unbreakable and perfect for attacks on foes. Now, to operate a vimana, you'd need to know a lot of stuff, pretty much like today's airplane pilots, 32 secrets in total. They'd cover the aircraft structure and the secrets of taking off and maneuvering without crashing. That's a good thing. The pilot was also expected to know how to be seen and unseen, how to be hidden, how to be quick, how to manage contractions and expansion, and many other tricks. To hide the flying machine from foes, the pilot was instructed to move to the 8th atmospheric layer above the Earth and use the power of dark solar rays. This instruction might sound a bit weird, but there were others, more realistic ones, which still make sense in modern aeronautics. There are sections of ancient texts on the vimanas that focus on details like flight paths, pilot training, navigation, and even suitable clothes for pilots and recommended food for long flights. There was also a lot of technical detail about the use of heat-absorbing metals, the metals utilized, and melting points. The supporters of the theory that the vimanas were more than just myths are sure that the ancient Indians would unlikely go into all these details just for a beautiful story. So, the flying palaces might have been real and way ahead of their time, like many other great Indian inventions. Back in the 6th century BCE, an Indian physician named Sushruta basically wrote the original guide to medicine and surgery. They even called him the father of surgery for his work. Sushruta laid down the details on hundreds of medicinal plants and described complex surgical procedures. He gave instructions on nose reconstructions and skin transplants from one part of the body to another. The original method of rhinoplasty, which involved taking a piece of skin from the forehead to reconstruct the nose, is still used today. But back then, it had a slightly different purpose than surprising your followers on social media. Those nose jobs helped out folks who had lost their noses as punishment for crimes or in fights. Now, you gotta thank an ancient Indian math prodigy for the invention of zero. It might not seem like a big deal, but without it, we would have no binary system and no computers. People before the 5th century CE were only thinking about some sort of a sign to indicate nothing. The invention made addition, subtraction, and other mathematical operations a whole lot easier. You can see the oldest zero in existence carved in the wall of a temple in Gwalior, India. The Indus Valley Civilization was using rulers in 1500 BCE and earlier. Made from ivory, these rulers were found during excavations in what is present-day Pakistan and northwestern India. They were widely used in architecture with amazing accuracy. They had units corresponding to slightly over 1 inch that were marked with precise subdivisions within 5/1000ths of an inch. The next invention is more of a concept than a physical item. Standardization is all about setting the rules based on a bunch of people, things, or interests. One of its cool applications that we've all gotten used to is standard weights. Whether you're using pounds or kilograms, you need these universal measurements for weight, right? For this, we owe a big shout-out to the merchants from the Indus Valley Civilization who lived around 4,000 years ago. They were measuring everything from food grains to fancy luxury goods using these standardized weights. And their weights had decimal and binary mathematical systems going on. They didn't have high-tech gear, but they pulled off some serious precision using complex calculations and even sand for construction. Their art of standardization made its way to Persia and Central Asia, basically becoming the global weight-watching standard. So, if yoga is your go-to exercise, you definitely have a personal reason to appreciate the ancient Indian geniuses. Over 5,000 years ago, during the rule of the Indus Sarasvati civilization in northern India, yoga was first mentioned in the Vedas. Yoga was refined and shaped over the centuries until it grew into a massive teaching with over 200 sacred writings dedicated to this way of obtaining enlightenment. At the beginning of the current era, yoga got a new trajectory thanks to a Hindu writer who laid down a system of yoga in his text, the Yoga Sutras. It became a whole-body rejuvenation, a life-extending practice with poses that you are still doing on the mat today. Yoga has reached the Western world only in the 19th century, and it caught on like wildfire. Chess, the all-time top game for intellectuals, is also an Indian invention. Its ancestor was called Chaturanga, and it was a strategic board game that started gaining popularity around 3,000 years before the current era. This early Indian version of chess was played by 4 people, not 2, and had 64 squares. Each player had 8 pieces, ranging from pawns to kings, bishops to knights, and there was no standard 6-faced dice. They rolled with an oblong one. Players facing off were actually allies, forming 2 teams based on the direction they sat. Chess, that we know and love today, was first mentioned in ancient Indian literature in a legend. It said that the wife of a villain called Ravana had invented the game to amuse him. Now, the word shampoo comes from the Hindi word, which means to soothe or knead. The substance was invented in India in 1762 and was originally used for head massages, hence the name. The first shampoo was made of natural oils and herbs. British traders fell in love with the idea and brought it back with them to England. It took years for the original head massage oil to evolve into shampoo as we know it today, but it's still an Indian invention. Unlike the ancient Greeks, who wore animal skins, the Indians started cultivating cotton back in the 5th and 4th centuries before the current era. They used cotton threads to produce fabrics that soon became a huge hit in the Mediterranean and beyond. Jute and wool also have their origins in India. Cashmere, the finest and most exclusive type of wool, actually comes from the Kashmir region of India. Buttons that sit proudly on that cashmere cardigan of yours also have ancient Indian origins. Some 5,000 years ago, the Indus Valley civilization started cutting seashells into geometric shapes with tiny holes in them. First, they were just decorations, but then people started using them to fasten clothes. Now, when you think about radio communication pioneers, Marconi's name usually steals the spotlight. He got a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909 for his groundbreaking radio work. But there's an unsung hero in the radio waves game, and his name is Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose. He spilled the beans on radio communication way back in 1895. He shot an electromagnetic wave across 75 feet at the town hall in Calcutta, and it went through walls, rang a bell, and even set off some gunpowder. Marconi took a page from Bose's book, using his invention, the Mercury Coherer, as a blueprint for his own two-way radio. Bose didn't patent his genius creation, so he only got his credit a century later.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodragon boreas, which translates to Frozen Dragon of the North Winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. The man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, 2 hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Undre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Undre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Undre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yucca, after the small village near where it was found. Yucca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yucca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yucca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gomburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, a businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on two ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists describe the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights.
Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period, around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you maybe wonder, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travel's just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE. and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak Temple Complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Roka. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Saqqara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of 2 main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo-Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Xigantia Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of two megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Xigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Tiridates I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Strange and amazing items are discovered often, but figuring out what our ancestors were up to is pretty tough. Especially when all you have are just some rusty cups and cave drawings. It's no surprise that even the experts in lab coats sometimes make mistakes. But it's not just about dusty plates and huge stones. Sometimes there's even humans with large heads. So grab your digging tools and let's travel back to ancient times to explore incredible societies that even scientists can't fully explain. Sardinia may look idyllic now, but I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't fancy visiting it 3,000 years ago. Rumor has it, terrible giants roamed around this island back then. People even talk about finding human skeletons over 13 feet tall there, although nobody's ever shown anything to prove it. But the stories will make you wonder because some weird stuff has definitely happened. In 1974, over 5,000 pieces of broken stone artifacts were found in a part of the island called Monte Prama, but instead of being displayed in a museum, they were locked up in an underground vault for about 30 years. Sounds a bit suspicious, doesn't it? When they were finally displaced in 2005, scientists put the pieces together to find statues of 38 giant men standing 8 feet tall. Not quite as tall as the legendary skeletons, but still pretty huge. It's thought these statues were made by the Nuragic people, who lived on the island a long time ago. Besides giant statues, they also built over 8,000 massive stone buildings. Perhaps Nuragic weren't giants themselves, but they definitely liked their things big. I do too. I like a big number of likes on our videos, that would be pretty great. Thank you if you liked this and subscribed. Now back to the video. You and I are pretty smart, but we might not be the smartest humans ever. Actually, we might not even be the smartest species. Since 1913, some skull fossils found in South Africa have hinted at a possibly smarter contender called Boskop Man. This human-like species might have lived as recently as 10,000 years ago. Their skull suggests they had really big heads, which means their brains could have been 30% bigger than ours. Wow! Their average IQ could have been around 149, making them among the smartest 0.05% of people today. But if a Boskop brainiac was so much smarter, why are they not around and we are? Well, bigger isn't always better, you know. Our brains are a lot bigger than our ape relatives, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. This part helps with high-level tasks like making decisions, remembering things short-term, and being aware of ourselves. The parts of the brain that handle our senses and movements haven't really grown much. So, maybe the Boskops spent too much time dwelling on the past rather than doing practical things like hunting. But this is all just guessing. We really don't know what happened to these clever cousins of ours. Some people even argue that Boskops weren't any different from us, with the only evidence being parts of skulls. The jungle is huge. Did you know the Amazon rainforest is home to about 30% of all the world's plant and animal species? That's impressive. However, the history of one native species, humans, has long puzzled scientists. The mysterious Kasarabe people lived here for hundreds of years and then vanished around 1400 AD. People thought the Amazon only had a few scattered tribes, but recently we discovered big, unusual shapes in the ground called geoglyphs. These might look like simple shallow ditches, but they're actually the remains of a vast civilization that spread over 5,000 square miles and includes about 450 markings, some as wide as 1,300 feet. That's insane! They likely contained ceremonial buildings and could have hosted up to 1 million people as recently as 550 years ago. Thanks to new technology like LiDAR, which uses a safe laser to map the forest without harming it, we can explore deeper. In 2019, some scans showed miles of raised roads and pathways and even pyramids over 70 feet tall. They found 26 separate settlements, 2 of which were at least 250 acres each. Damn, that's like 330 soccer fields. It's not certain what happened to the Kasarabe people. Maybe European conquistadors drove them out. Maybe the most baffling ancient civilization is one we've never actually found a trace of. Yep, I'm talking about Atlantis, the grand city that supposedly sank into the ocean. The first mentions of Atlantis come from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about a great city near the Strait of Gibraltar. But for ages, everyone just thought Plato made up Atlantis as a perfect version of his own Athens. So why, about 12,000 years after it supposedly vanished, do we still wonder if it might be real? Well, in the 19th century, U.S. Congressman Ignatius Donnelly wrote a book giving 13 reasons why he thought Atlantis was more than just a myth. Then, in 1965, some folks thought they actually found Atlantis when they discovered the Richat structure, a massive 25-mile-wide dome in Mauritania, Africa. It's so big that you can see the whole thing from space. 2 astronauts flying over the Sahara Desert spotted this giant eye staring back at them and thought they'd made the discovery of a lifetime. Unfortunately, there's no solid evidence linking this structure to Atlantis. It's believed to have formed from volcanic activity about 100 million years ago. But it does look suspicious, doesn't it? Still, we're no closer to knowing the truth. Imagine going back to about 3,300 BCE and finding yourself in South Asia. Welcome to the Harappan civilization. These people were way ahead of their time. They had cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, complete with baked brick houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and even public baths. This place might have had over 5 million people, making it one of the densest regions at the time. They also invented a system of standardized weights that was incredibly useful for traders. And trading they did. These people had connections stretching all the way to the Middle East, thanks to their great skills in metallurgy. They even had a form of ancient branding. The seals were used to stamp clay on tray goods. Despite being so advanced with a thriving urban life, there's a whole bunch of mystery shrouding their language and script. We've got bits and pieces of their writing, but no one's deciphered them yet, even with all the technology we have today. We also still don't know how exactly their society worked. It looks like they didn't flaunt their social status as much as other civilizations. No grand palaces or massive monuments. Instead, their largest buildings might have been granaries. They sure were practical. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Around 1800 BCE, this bustling civilization started to decline, possibly due to shifts in river patterns. As the environment changed, the Harappans packed up, moving towards more hospitable lands. Ever heard of the Minotaur? The beast with a bull's head and a man's body, hunting the bravest travelers in a massive maze. Well, this wasn't just any old tale. It was one of the most popular dramas of the ancient world, and it was inspired by this place, the island of Crete. The Minoans lived here during the Bronze Age. They had stunning palaces, amazing frescoes, and a culture so rich it still fascinates historians to this day. They built places like Knossos, which was so complex with its multi-story buildings and elaborate hallways that it might have inspired the whole labyrinth myth. Their engineering was so ahead of its time that even their drainage systems were more advanced than what many of us have today. Let me know in the comments which of these stories you find the most fascinating, and thanks for watching.
You know, scientists make discoveries that change the world, but even they can face mysteries. Here are 10 things that have baffled scientists. Imagine that you constantly hear a low-frequency hum, and no one can trace its source. Roughly 4% of the world's population hears the hum. It's a geography-free sound. I mean, people all around the world hear it, so the name varies from Taos hum to Auckland hum, depending on the region where it gets generated. The sound is just on the threshold of human hearing. People hear it less when they're outside, and it gets louder indoors, especially at night. What's even scarier is that you cannot unhear it once you've heard it. Some folks say it started in London around the time of Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol, and the low-frequency sound actually comes from the humbug. Or not. Actually, the earliest cases were recorded in Bristol, UK, dating back to the mid-1970s. Scientists have various theories about where the hum comes from and why only some people can hear it, yet they don't have a clear answer. It could occur when ocean waves move along the ocean floor. They shake the Earth when they collide with continental shelves. Or this might be happening because of volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. Oh, and how about ultra-low frequency radio signals used to communicate with submarines or even 5G? Upsweep is another type of unidentified sound. It was discovered in 1991 in the Pacific Ocean. The sound is high enough to be recorded throughout the ocean. Scientists theorize that the sound could be related to underwater volcanic activity. Interestingly, the volume of the sound has been diminishing compared to its volume when it was first discovered, yet it still can be detected. Plus, it's seasonal. It reaches its highest volume in spring and fall. Is it related to seasonal changes? No one really knows for sure. The next mysterious thing is a cone-shaped monument found in the Sea of Galilee in Israel. This monument was discovered accidentally by sonar scanning in 2003, but the findings were published only in 2013. The monument weighs 60,000 tons. It was once submerged by rising waters. Archaeologists say the monument is enigmatic because they can't figure out where it's from. They don't know what it's connected to or its function. So this big and unusual thing remains a mystery. Now let's move to Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. This place offers you one of the most archaeologically significant sites in the world. Why is it important? Well, it has massive carved stones about 11,000 years old. To put it in perspective, they're 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. Ancient people placed these stones before they began farming or crafting metal tools or pottery. So the existence of this place goes against the chronology of civilization we're familiar with, where people farmed first and built second. Apparently, it wasn't like that. In any case, a good question is, what was the purpose of this site? Was it built to worship some spirits? Yep, archaeologists believe it might be the world's oldest temple. Okay, say this with me. Paleodictyon noticeum. Yeah, I know it sounds like a chemical formula. This is a living fossil found deep down on the ocean floor. A creature makes these hexagonal burrows, that for sure. Yet scientists can't identify the artists. Now, what do I mean by living fossil? Well, Paleodictyon notisum is a creature believed to produce a burrow nearly identical to Paleodictyon fossils. Is it a worm-like animal that made them? Scientists don't know. One thing is clear, this isn't some random stuff created by geological forces. Now, speaking of fossils, take a look at this giant one. Its informal name is Godzillius. It was discovered in 2011 by an amateur paleontologist. This is a scientist who studies the history of life on Earth by analyzing fossil records. Anyway, back to Godzillius. It's almost 7 feet in length and 9 feet tall if you were to measure it upright. This fossil is 450 million years old, coming from the time when Cincinnati was underwater. It might be a fossilized algae mat, but some scientists have different opinions. This is a massive tunnel found in South America. The tunnel is at least 8,000 to 10,000 years old. At first, researchers discovered a couple of colossal burrows. They were enormous and neatly constructed. Geologists were amazed, saying they had never seen such structures before. There's no known geologic process to explain their formation. I mean, researchers have known about the burrows since the 1930s, but back then they believed that these tunnels were just some sort of archaeological construction, until they discovered huge claw marks on the walls and ceiling. They reasoned that some extinct species could be the ones to have left these marks. Many geologists strongly believe they found the burrows of giant ground sloths and armadillos. The structure is the largest known burrow from the Paleolithic age in the Amazon. Yet experts have many questions. How come such a deliberate-looking structure could form naturally? A researcher then discovered another strange cave. This one was hundreds of miles away from the massive tunnel. Fast forward, there are now more than 1,500 burrows from the Paleolithic age found in Brazil. What's even more interesting is that some of these caves are connected to tunnels that sometimes lead to chambers. I'll continue with a natural phenomenon. What if I told you that every year, especially in October, fireballs appear on the Mekong River in Thailand? According to legends, Naga fireballs are a call for Buddha to return to Earth, and river serpents are the ones making these calls. Well, that's a myth, but what does science say about it? Is it related to a flammable gas? There are no clear answers yet. These fireballs appear to rise from the water. They can go as high as almost 990 feet. They're like fireworks, disappearing rapidly. They typically glow with a reddish or orange color. I'll mention some legends too, because why not? They're thrilling. And it would be a shame not to include the one about the lost city of Atlantis. As you may know, the legend says that Atlantis submerged into the ocean around 11,000 years ago. Since then, not just scientists, but also treasure hunters and philosophers have been searching for the lost world. Could Bimini Road be a trace? In 1968, a diver found strange stones off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. The stones look human-made. It's like they were evenly spaced out and laid in an orderly row. It baffled scientists, but not for long. Carbon dating analysis of the blocks revealed that geological forces created the road naturally. There weren't any tool marks or signs indicating that the blocks had been stacked or something. The research is continuing, but yeah, scientists generally believe that the rocks were created by erosion. Well, I guess the time of Atlantis hasn't come yet. Okay, picture this. You're wandering on the beach, and you see dozens of octopuses walking past. In 2017, a group of people from Wales witnessed exactly this. Why did these creatures come out of the ocean? No one knows the answer. The group reported that they had seen 20 to 30 octopi crawling on the sand. The people looked for some signs of injury, but found nothing. They said that they had carried the animals back to the ocean. Interestingly, these creatures kept crawling onto the shore when people were asleep. Experts say that it's hard to be sure of the reason that pushed the animals to the beach without conducting a physical examination. They're still speculating about the reason behind this unusual and rare occurrence. Could it be overcrowding? Furthermore, the octopi were well armed. A separate study points out that the more fishers hunt large animals that feed on octopuses, the more the octopus population grows. Maybe that's why these creatures have to go farther to find food or shelter. But without proper research, these are only theories. There's a lot we don't know about space, too. So here's a bonus fact about the yellowish source of life in the solar system. Scientists have discovered a new type of wave inside the sun. These waves move in the opposite direction to the sun's rotation. Plus, they move super fast, so fast that it's beyond our understanding. Researchers have different theories about the function of the waves. If they figure out their role, this could give them additional insight into the processes happening inside the sun. And yes, the octopi were well armed. So how come the world is still talking about a statue that only existed for a mere 54 years over 2,000 years ago? What made this impressive ancient construction so remarkable that we're still discussing it? I'm talking about the Colossus of Rhodes, of course. It's considered to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, along with the Great Pyramid of Giza or the Gardens of Babylon. There are a lot of mysteries surrounding this ancient statue, but let's look at some of the facts first, shall we? What we do know is that the local Rhodians decided to start a massive project once a Macedonian siege over their island was over. In other words, it was their way of honoring the higher powers for their victory. Using a lot of material left behind by the Macedonians, they started the construction of the Colossus, which is estimated to have taken about 12 years. Most contemporary descriptions of the sculpture agree that it stood about 105 feet tall. Now, just to compare, that's about the size of the Statue of Liberty today, which is 151 feet tall. It may not seem like a lot. I mean, Lady Liberty is currently ranked as the 52nd tallest statue in the world. The champion here would be the Statue of Unity in India, standing proud at an astonishing 597 feet. But for ancient times, that was quite an accomplishment. But is the similar height the only connection between the Colossus of Rhodes and the Statue of Liberty? Not really. We do know that they both also refer to Lady Liberty as the modern Colossus, since both statues were constructed as a symbol of liberation. There's even a plaque placed inside the pedestal of the New York statue, inscribed with the first verse of the sonnet, "The New Colossus," not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. To build this massive Colossus statue, they sure needed a lot of bronze. Some ancient records even recount that the construction required 27,000 to 29,000 pounds of bronze. Even for modern times, this is a lot, but back then, they even called it an operation that involved the bronze industry of the entire world. The man tasked with bringing the statue to life was Chares of Lindos, a local Greek sculptor. The whole construction took place from 294 to 282 BCE. But unfortunately, Chares never got to see the end result. We don't know for sure why that happened, but some records claim constructing the Colossus of Rhodes may have led him to complete bankruptcy, since he failed to accurately estimate the cost for the massive statue. Anyway, we still don't know for sure how it was possible to build a statue this big back in those days. They had none of the equipment we have today, like excavators or elevators. Some old records said that they had to invent a completely new, custom method to build it. It all happened on the location, put together piece by piece. They supposedly split the statue into many different sections, and the first one to be constructed was the feet. Once each section was done, huge mounds of earth were placed around it, so they could continue working on the next section above. However, these records were made more than 100 years after the Colossus was finished, so there's little we can say about the accuracy of this information. In all those 12 years, the local Greeks worked around the clock to build the Colossus of Rhodes. They started with a white marble base that they placed at the statue's feet. They then continued with some sort of an iron skeleton, to which they attached the bronze plates. Why did they choose bronze, though? Well, that was more for practical reasons, since bronze is stronger than iron and it can also sustain extreme weather conditions. More so, if you think about it, The statue was located pretty close to the sea, so the air surrounding it would have been pretty salty. That's why they needed to make it out of quite sturdy material. And what about the location? Well, that's something that has been up for debate for a long time. Researchers initially believed that the statue stood with each leg on either side of the Mandrake Harbor, one of many in the city of Rhodes, basically straddling its entrance. As imposing as that may sound, it was likely not the case. First of all, that would have meant the harbor would have to have been closed for the whole duration of the construction, which doesn't seem to match all the other records. More so, after the statue had fallen, it would have probably blocked the entirety of the harbor, which again doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere. Most recent depictions say that it most likely stood either on the eastern side of the Mandrake Harbor or maybe even further inland. So, what happened to this impressive structure? Is there really nothing left of it to this day? And why did it survive for only 54 years, since it took so long to build and it was so important for locals? Well, as admired and valued as it was to the Greeks, an earthquake took the Colossus of Rhodes away from them. The story goes that because of the movement of the earth beneath it, the statue snapped at its knees and was completely laid on the ground. Nonetheless, the statue still continued to be admired for centuries. The Rhodians refused to rebuild it as they considered it a sign and did not dare intervene with destiny. By the middle of the 7th century, they had taken away what was left of the statue completely. Legend says it took about 900 camels to carry all the bronze away from the location. And what about the looks of the statue? This is also one aspect that is still shrouded in mystery. Even though it was a symbol of the locals' pride in maintaining their independence, they did not use the depiction of the statue for any of the coins they made, even though that was kind of customary. Other art historians do think, however, that the Colossus was similar to other depictions of the same mythological creature, a male figure that had rays of light rising from its head. The position of its hands is also still up for debate. Some say it might have even been holding a torch. We don't know if his hands were pointed straight down or whether the right arm was raised, like in similar representations in Greek mythology. The original might not be here for us to admire anymore, but there are some plans out there to rebuild it. A group of European architects intends to build a 21st century version of the ancient statue. This new construction is planned to stretch 500 feet tall. It should serve as a cultural center combined with a lighthouse. To make sure it won't have the same destiny as its ancient ancestor, these designers intend to use a lot of technology available today. Firstly, they plan to cover the whole exterior of the modern Colossus with solar panels so that the enormous building has enough electricity. They also intend to use modern resources to make sure earthquakes and wind forces won't affect the massive structure yet again. To do that, they plan to build the statue as a tripod structure, made from its 2 legs and a third pillar of support, constructed from the sash draped over the statue's arm and touching the ground. They also plan to place heavy steel support around the base for counterbalance. They even thought of a suspension system that would permit the statue to rock back and forth, making it a bit more flexible and able to resist all the various weather conditions. The manufacturer's suggested retail price on this project is quite high though, estimated at around $283 million. Supporters of the modern Colossus are optimistic as they are certain they can raise that impressive amount of cash through crowdfunding and private investments. Scientists have finally solved the Loch Ness Monster mystery. Here's the spoiler, you ready? It's not a real monster. It's probably a dinosaur that survived through the ages, or just a bunch of debris floating on the water. Thanks to many findings on the Loch Ness creature, we have proof of another story to tell you. It was 1933 when a man named George Spicer and his wife were driving along the shores of Loch Ness. That's when they saw something massive with a long neck moving across the road. It looked like a creature straight out of the prehistoric era, a dinosaur-like beast unlike anything they'd ever seen. That was the moment that Loch Ness Monster theories started spreading around like wildfire. One of the most famous Loch Ness Monster sightings came just a year later, in 1934, when a man took a photograph that became the most well-known image of Nessie. That's the nickname she was given. She? Anyways, the photo, known as the surgeon's photograph, showed a long-necked creature rising out of the water, and for years it convinced people that the monster was real. But years later, the truth came out. One of the men who helped take the photo confessed it was all a hoax. The photo had been staged after all. When the photo was published, it had been significantly cropped. This made the animal in the picture look much bigger than in real life, fueling the theories that the Loch Ness Monster did in fact exist. In the 1960s, one of the first big scientific attempts to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster happened. A research team took sonar equipment to the lake and spent hours scanning the waters in search of evidence of large creatures. What they found was puzzling. They recorded several objects moving deep in the loch, or lake, with no clear explanation as to what it was. Though the team didn't manage to capture anything definitive, this sighting helped fuel the belief that there was indeed something massive living in Loch Ness. After that, research about the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster kept popping up. In 1972, with the help of underwater photography, some researchers managed to capture strange images, which got people's hopes up for a minute. But the truth is, this early research about the Loch Ness Monster was far from conclusive. Now, of course, not everyone bought into the mystical, magical theories about the Loch Ness Monster. Theory 1, from a professor of zoology at Oxford University, has made it clear that the monster is a biological impossibility. Hey, my pediatrician said that about me, too. Meanwhile, he says that no skeletal remains have ever been found in the region. Plus, no fishermen have ever caught anything resembling the creature in their fishing nets. For him, this works as proof that it simply can't be real. When it comes to the famous photos of the Loch Ness Monster as evidence, well, that's pretty simple. The professor offers a more down-to-earth explanation. He argues that these images are either showing floating debris or birds, like cormorants, which have long necks and often appear to be low in the water. When people refute his suggestion, he takes us back to human psychology and explains that people often make mistakes and misjudge the size of things, especially when they just caught a glimpse of it, and even more so when they are hoping to see something specific. Now, many of those alleged photos depict an animal with a long neck and a small head, which has led some to believe that what they're seeing is a plesiosaur, a giant marine reptile that lived 215 million years ago and disappeared with the dinosaurs. The idea of a plesiosaur surviving all these years is a theory that's been around since the first sightings of the creature. But this researcher isn't buying it. He explains that no plesiosaur fossils have been found in the region dating to anything later than 66 million years ago. The idea of a prehistoric creature still lurking in the waters of Loch Ness just doesn't hold up scientifically. Then there's theory number 2, from a British naturalist who has spent over 50 years investigating the Loch Ness Monster phenomenon. His conclusion is a little less dramatic. He believes that most people who report sightings of long-necked creatures are misidentifying other animals. He suggests people think they are seeing a sea serpent. Reports of sightings from the Loch Ness Monster have been around since the 6th century CE, long before they were distilling Scotch whiskey or other explanations. Early reports of these sea serpents describe large creatures with long snake-like bodies and multiple humps. Some say the creatures were as big as boats, and many swore they saw something swimming in the waters. Many of these early sea serpent sightings may have been misunderstandings or exaggerations of normal animals in the loch, like large fish or even swimming birds. They could have been large eels, which are known to live in Loch Ness. These eels, especially when they're moving, might have given the impression of a long, undulating creature in the water. People who saw these eels from a distance, particularly in low light or misty conditions, might have mistaken them for something much more mysterious. Theory number 3 says something else. Nessie is just a series of standing waves. These happen when two boat wakes move in opposite directions, creating a big hump in the water that could look like a creature from a distance. Loch Ness enthusiasts even showed how it works with footage from Fort Augustus, where a river meets Loch Ness. These enthusiasts had big plans to use drones with infrared cameras and special underwater microphones to search the loch. Now, Loch Ness is massive, stretching around 23 miles long and more than 700 feet deep. So, they thought they needed drones and infrared cameras to put an end to this discussion. But despite everything, they haven't found Nessie. But it's not only the Loch Ness Monster that lacks scientific explanation. There have also been scores of sightings of Yetis and Sasquatches that no one can really explain. Folks have made movies, dreaming of finding the truth about these creatures. But, according to recent research and evidence, it looks unlikely that we'll ever find definitive evidence of their existence. Science says they can explain Sasquatch sightings, and this is how. Biologists who study wildlife using camera traps, which are set up in remote areas to capture images of passing animals, have long attempted to find elusive species. These cameras detect movement and snap pictures, providing invaluable data on the biodiversity of different ecosystems. As camera traps collect more photos over time, the number of species recorded grows. However, after a while, the number plateaus, suggesting that no new species are being detected. While it's impossible to claim 100% certainty, researchers say that after significant camera deployment, it's safe to say the likelihood of discovering new species, especially large ones like Bigfoot or the Yeti, drops significantly. Camera trap studies have been running for years in regions where these creatures are rumored to live, but so far, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Instead, the supposed proof of Bigfoot or the Yeti often comes from blurry photos or shaky videos taken by individuals who claim to have encountered them. The scientific understanding of biology also makes the existence of Bigfoot highly unlikely. Often described as a great ape, Bigfoot would have had to evolve in North America. However, great apes evolved in Africa, and the only great ape to make it to the Americas is Homo sapiens, whose ancestors crossed the Bering Strait only about 16,000 years ago. This is far too short a time for a new species like Bigfoot to have evolved. While it may be disappointing for these mysterious creature enthusiasts, the scientific evidence points firmly toward the conclusion that creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are more fantasy than reality. After decades of extensive scientific research, it's safe to say that yes, science has solved the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster, and it's pure fiction. So, what do you think? In July 1990, 4 Czech guys decided to go on an adventure to find the Mongolian death worm, a creature that might have inspired the monster you've seen in the movie Doom. They say it lives somewhere deep in the Gobi Desert, so they flew to Mongolia, hopped into an ATV, and hired some local guides to help them. All that to meet a creature that is up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything, and is capable of shooting electricity at those it doesn't like. Legend says that these friendly guys spend most of their days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but they'd like to come out during the wetter months of June and July. So the timing for a spotting was simply perfect, but the crew needed to figure out how to lure the creature. Sadly for them, no one knew what the giant worm liked to eat, so they built a thumper, which is a machine that made rhythmic pounding noises. They were hoping it would call the worm out of the ground. For 2 months, they searched the vast desert, crossing dunes and rocky plains, looking for any sign of the creature. But alas, it didn't really work out. Ivan McCurley, who was the leader of the 1990 expedition, came back to Gobi Desert again. He once tried to attract the megaworm with blasts, and the second time he used a small airplane to scout the dunes. Over the years, groups from America, Britain, and New Zealand organized big expeditions to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many others came from all around the world on their own and found nothing. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At a meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them described it as looking like a sausage, about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so venomous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. In May 2005, 4 friends from Great Britain who search for monsters professionally decided to try their luck. They made drawings of the worm and hired local people to hand out flyers all over the Gobi Desert. These flyers offered a reward to anyone who could give information about the worm or even bring them a specimen. They thought loud sounds that other explorers tried would scare the beast away. Some told them it likes damp conditions, so they came up with a plan to block streams of water to create wet areas that would lure the worm out. Their plan didn't work because it was too hard to build dams in the desert. They ended up using small traps, but didn't find any actual proof that the worm existed. But they did meet locals who shared interesting stories about strange creatures they had seen over 70 years. Over the years, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. It's white-gray or scaly and brown, or maybe fleshy and bright red. Someone said it resembled a snake, or maybe a caterpillar, or maybe it has wings and can fly. And some believe it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. Maybe the stories are so different, and the search operations are so fruitless, because the creature doesn't even exist. Or it could be one of many cryptids. Those creatures like Bigfoot, Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, their existence has yet to be proven. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to catch the mysterious worm. He also learned there was a nest nearby. The scientist bravely approached the hole in the sand and put his hand inside. A giant creature dragged him in, and he was never seen again. Just kidding. He actually found a Tartar sand boa inside. It's a chunky, burrowing, non-venomous snake that has small eyes and gray-brown scales. He showed it to the locals to verify if it was the monster, and supposedly all of them said yes. Most Mongolians who know about the worm still believe it's real. Now, even though people call our supposed monster a worm, it's just what it sounds like in the English translation. Many Mongol cultures have used this word for centuries to refer to any animals they thought to be really dangerous, especially snakes, even non-venomous ones. So, it doesn't have to be a literal worm after all. Worms are soft and squishy, but a creature living in the harsh Gobi Desert would need to be tougher, more like a snake or a type of lizard without legs. Neither of these creatures can shoot electricity or spit acid like they say the death worm does. But some snakes, like cobras, can spit venom that's dangerous for people. If it were real, the creature would have a backbone, and explorers searching for it would likely find some bones or evidence left behind. And there are actually fossil remains all over the Gobi Desert. Scientists found representatives of over 80 dino groups here over the last almost 100 years. It all started with the world's first dinosaur egg nests. This discovery changed all the scientists knew about dinos. It was the first proof they laid eggs. In the following 2 years, the same expedition team unearthed over 100 dinosaurs and took them to the American Museum of Natural History, where you can still see them today. Some of them were swimming around in the Cretaceous Sea that used to be here about 71 million years ago. They resembled modern birds. The mystery of the megaworm is still unsolved, but there used to be another mystery scientists finally managed to explain. Back in the 13th century, a famous traveler, Marco Polo, not the guy from the swimming pool game, crossed the Gobi Desert. He thought he could hear mysterious noises, like the sounds of musical instruments such as drums. He wrote about it in his book and believed he might be hearing the voices of restless spirits. Scientists call these noises singing sands or booming sands. Unlike the squeaky sound you might hear when walking on a sandy beach, these desert sounds are much louder, like a musical instrument playing deep, haunting notes. Over the years, people came up with all kinds of ideas about what caused the sounds, like underground water or winds making the sand vibrate. Not all dunes can do this, and scientists wanted to figure out why. Sometimes the winds might cause a small avalanche on the side of a dune, and then you can hear the magical sound start. But this is rare. So, to study it, scientists had to help the dunes sing. They climbed to the top of a dune and slid down on their backs, using their hands and feet to push sand down. As the sand tumbled, the sound started softly and got louder. They could even feel the vibrations with their hands. So they found out that for a dune to sing, a few special things need to happen. The grains of sand must be the right shape. The dune has to be big, and the sand must be very dry, so no singing after it rains. Inside the dune, there's a hard layer of packed sand that acts like a giant speaker. This layer bounces the sound waves back and forth, makes the noise louder and louder, and creates a haunting melody that can fill the desert air. In other words, the dunes can play tunes. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't help myself with that one. In 2011, scientists from Chile found a weird-looking fossil in Antarctica that looked like a squashed football. Almost 10 years later, the rock just sat on a shelf in Chile's National Museum of Natural History with no specific label. It went by The Thing in the museum because it looked like something from a science fiction movie. When the scientists finally got their hands on the strange fossil, it turned out it was actually a giant softshell egg from around 66 million years ago. This one is more than 11 inches long and 7 inches wide. A regular chicken egg is just 2.5 inches long, and an ostrich egg is almost 6 inches long for comparison. So, the Thing won the title of the biggest softshell egg ever found and the second largest egg of any animal we know of. The only bigger egg that was ever found was that of the extinct Madagascan elephant bird, which is also 1.5 times as tall as Michael Jordan. The bird, not the egg. The Antarctic egg is also special because it's the first fossil ever found in this part of the world. So, whoever left it there must have been one big creature, probably a giant sea turtle that lived long ago, like a mosasaur. This is surprising because most scientists thought these creatures didn't even lay eggs. So this discovery could change what we know about them. The egg is also unique because it has a thin eggshell and no pores, which is totally different from most dinosaur eggs. It actually looks more like the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it came from a giant creature related to these animals. No known dinosaurs or flying reptiles from that time and place were big enough to lay such a huge egg, so it must have been a mosasaur after all. But we can't be 100% sure. Scientists did a lot of work and studied 259 types of living reptiles, like lizards and snakes, and their eggs. From this, they figured out that the mommy who laid the egg was probably at least 23 feet long, not counting her tail. During the late Cretaceous period, this part of Antarctica might have been like a nursery. Paleontologists have found bones of tiny mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the same area, along with bones from the grown-up ones. Archaeologists in Norway made another cool but literally discovery and found dozens of arrows that had been hidden in ice for 6,000 years. They were melting out of a large ice patch in the high mountains, covering an area of about 45 football fields. In 2014 and 2016, when the summers were extra warm, scientists went to an ice patch called Langfoni to look around. They also found lots of reindeer bones and antlers there. Some of the arrows were whole and some in pieces, along with 5 arrowheads around the melting ice patch. This is more arrows than have been found at any other frozen site in the world. Some of the 68 found arrows date back to the Neolithic period, and the newest ones are from the 14th century of the Common Era. Ice is like the perfect time machine that can preserve whatever ends up there in an almost perfect condition. Langfoni became famous as one of the first ice patch sites after a local hiker found a 3,300-year-old leather shoe right next to its edge. Scientists are studying places like this to understand how people use these sites and how the ice patches from Norway to North America changed over time. Now, once upon a time, around 32,000 years ago, to be exact, a squirrel buried some seeds near a river in Siberia. Am I the only one getting the Ice Age vibes? Anyway, these seeds belong to a plant with cute white flowers. Thousands of years later, a group of scientists found these seeds buried deep in the frozen ground, about as far down as a 12-story building is tall. The seeds were surrounded by ice and bones of animals, like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinoceroses. The mature seeds had been damaged, maybe by some squirrel, but some of the younger seeds still had good plant parts inside them. The scientists carefully took those out and put them in small containers to help them grow. And here comes the coolest part. They were able to grow the plants. Their flowers were shaped a little differently from the flowers of the same plant that grows today. After a year, the Ice Age plant even made new seeds. Based on this, the scientists suggested that permafrost could be a depository for an ancient gene pool, and we could find extinct species there and bring them back to life. Scientists on an icebreaker in Antarctica were looking for whales, but found something way more unusual. The camera behind the ship, which is as heavy as a car, detected 16 million ice fish nests on the floor of the Weddell Sea. The nests were located about every 10 inches in all directions and covered an area of 93 square miles, which is slightly bigger than the whole of Washington, D.C. The colony even had a distinct border, which was a line in the sand. The scientists were in the area because they were studying a special spot in the ocean where the water was a little warmer than the water around it. In this warmer water, they found tiny animals called zooplankton near the top. When the young ice fish hatch, they swim up to this area to eat the zooplankton before going back down to the seafloor to grow up and have their own offspring. Since there was so much food, it made sense to see ice fish in this warm water. But they didn't expect to find such a huge number of ice fish nests, much more than anyone had ever seen before. New Zealand's Antarctic Heritage Fund found some old photo negatives in a hut in Antarctica. They turned out to be unique images from the Ross Sea Party. It was a famous failed expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. He wanted to become the first person to cross Antarctica by land, from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, passing through the South Pole. But things went wrong when their ship, the Aurora, was blown out to sea. They had to use the hut from another explorer, Captain Robert Falcon Scott. His goal was to be the first person to reach the North Pole, but sadly, he didn't succeed either. The negatives were made of cellulose nitrate and were found stuck together in the small box. The Trust took the negatives back to New Zealand, where they carefully separated them and discovered 22 hidden images. Many of the photos were damaged, but the Trust could still recognize some familiar places around McMurdo Sound, a well-known area in Antarctica. No one knows for sure who took the pictures. In December 2021, some scientists noticed a strange mark on the Larsen Ice Shelf, a giant sheet of ice off the eastern coast of Antarctica. They thought it might be a river flowing under the ice, so they drilled down over 1,600 feet to check it out. They expected to find water, but they didn't expect to see that the water was full of fast-moving creatures called amphipods. The scientists also found that the water in the underground river had unusual layers of currents moving in different directions, which they still don't fully understand. Another surprising thing happened during their research. On December 20th of the same year, a volcano erupted far away in Tonga, and the pressure waves from the eruption were detected all the way down in the ice river in Antarctica. It shows how everything on our planet is connected, even in the most distant places. There are entire communities of unusual tiny organisms that live in lagoons in Patagonia, and they are some of the first forms of life ever. No one had known about them until two scientists, Brian and Maria, went to explore certain areas in Patagonia. Now, Patagonia occupies nearly half of Argentina, and few people live there. Only some farmers and sheep ranchers that mostly stay near rivers and grow things such as apples, pears, and alfalfa. A long time ago, it was a wild and distant place where Indian tribes lived. But this time, we're going to follow the tracks of life forms that appeared long before humans and look closer at these interesting microorganisms Brian and Maria found. Those two had to drive for 9 hours on some rough roads to reach their destination. They stayed in a small village. Only 35 people live there. These people depend on just one spring because it almost never rains there. On the last night in the village, Brian realized that satellite images he had taken had shown a set of lagoons that were only 10 miles away. The next day, the small team jumped into a car and went up the road as far as they could until it became too difficult to drive. They continued hiking the rest of the way. It was hard because they had to carry water to deal with the intense sunlight. In some spots, they ended up sinking up to their knees in a slush made of salt. Up there were 12 lagoons with perfectly clear waters. The place itself didn't offer much except for very acidic and salty water and intense direct sunlight. But it was kind of like traveling back in time, because those conditions were like what Earth looked like many, many years ago. When Brian examined the lagoons, he was surprised to see many unusual microorganisms there. We call them stromatolites, and they're so small we can't even see them without a microscope. But they get together and form large communities. In the past, many unusual species lived this way. For example, cyanobacteria. They were important back in their time because they produced oxygen. Earth, in its initial stages, didn't have much of this gas in its atmosphere. The first stromatolites might have been formed by diverse types of bacteria that didn't necessarily produce any oxygen, but were just living their peaceful life there. They formed layers, piling on top of one another, so that at least some of them could get a bit of sunlight. They used sand and sticky liquids to stay close together. Brian was also incredibly surprised because those were the biggest living stromatolites he had ever seen. Living stromatolites usually grow to be over 3.3 feet high, but the newly found ones were 15 feet wide and a few feet tall, which is giant compared to those living in other places. And fossilized ones were even larger. A long time ago, they could grow bigger than today because there weren't many other species that could eat or harm them. Also, there are many other organisms today that can grow faster and more massive than them and take up their space. That's why stromatolites can only survive in rare places where hardly anything else can live, like in these very salty lagoons located high above sea level in Punta de Atacama. The stromatolites found there are the most famous ones because they might be some of the best examples of the earliest life on our planet. But they're not actually the first form of life on Earth. The oldest of their fossils are 3.5 billion years old, while some other evidence we have tells us that life on our planet appeared around 4.1 billion years ago. Maybe some stromatolites lived back then as well. But Earth has changed a lot since then, and the places where they might have lived haven't survived. Now, all this may not seem like a lot at first glance, because no one has found an exotic and weird beast our world has never seen. But these are notable examples of what searching for life somewhere else in the universe might look like. Scientists who are interested in studying Mars often come to this place, since it might be similar to what the red planet looked like an exceptionally long time ago. If there were fossils hidden in the ancient rocks on Mars, they might look like these stromatolites. Another faraway land has revealed some of its secrets. It's Antarctica, with an ancient lost world found under its ice. Antarctica hasn't always been this frosty, isolated land of snow and ice sheets. Once it used to be part of the Gondwana supercontinent, together with what is now South America, Africa, Australia, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Indian subcontinent. But at some point, it split off and went to build a life on its own. It formed as other landmasses started to move away, which created its coastline. But Antarctica was different in many other ways back then too. It used to be a land covered in magnificent forests and rivers full of life. Scientists use radar and satellites to explore a mysterious world hidden under the ice there. This ancient land, which is close to the Indian Ocean, is as big as the U.S. state of Maryland or Belgium. It's more than 14 million years old. Some studies say that this area formed over 34 million years ago, which was way before Antarctica got into its deep freeze. At first, temperatures there were higher, possibly like the weather in Patagonia or the cold, temperate rainforests of Tasmania, New Zealand, or maybe even more tropical than that. But as the climate became cooler, small glaciers started forming on hills close to the rivers. Valleys sunk deeper because of all that ice covering them. And then, temperatures dropped even lower, and a giant layer of ice covered the entire continent, hiding those old glaciers. Rivers shaped this lost world a long time ago, way before it ended up covered in ice that's almost 2 miles thick in some spots. Scientific studies of this area showed that those landscapes had been full of highlands and mountains. The ice that formed over Antarctica made the whole area very cold, so the landscape couldn't erode anymore. This means everything has remained basically the same and untouched under the ice for millions and millions of years. What's interesting is that we know less about this land hidden under the ice than about the surface of Mars. One way to explore it would be to drill through these ice sheets to check for samples of sediments below. They could tell us more about the ancient flora and fauna frozen underneath. It's not a new method. A similar method was used to collect 2-million-year-old samples in Greenland. Australia has a secret world too. Ancient organisms were found hidden in rocks in the northern parts of the continent that are about 1.6 billion years old. These microscopic things are part of a family called eukaryotes. The members of this family that exist today include plants, fungi, animals, and even those tiny organisms with just one cell, such as amoeba. All living things with nuclei in their cells, including us, can trace their family tree back to one of the oldest members of this family. That one is called the last eukaryotic common ancestor, and it lived more than 1.2 billion years ago. Those ancient organisms were more complex and bigger than bacteria. Maybe they were the first predators on Earth, hunting bacteria.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large, ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Paracetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was, but they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Paracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life. The Sahara Desert is home to highly dangerous creatures like the death stalker scorpion and the desert horned viper, but they're nothing compared to a mysterious beast that lived there 95 million years ago. Scientists just found a new dinosaur species in the Sahara Desert of Niger. His official name is Spinosaurus mirabilis, and let's just say you wouldn't want to cross paths with him. This beast was as long as a school bus and weighed several tons. He was a massive, powerful predator. His whole body was built to hunt. He used a trap-like jaw to catch the largest fish prehistoric Africa had to offer. His bottom teeth actually poked outward, fitting perfectly between his top teeth to create a tight grip. Once those jaws closed and trapped fish, they couldn't get away. His name, mirabilis, actually means astonishing in Latin. And that's because this dinosaur was a showstopper. He had a really flashy, weird feature. A tall, I mean really tall, crest on his head. It was so big, the researchers actually had to go back to the site and gather more pieces just to make sense of it. Today, it's all just bones, but the team thinks that when he was alive, that crest was brightly colored. It curved up toward the sky like a glowing blade. And being that flashy had one main goal: to attract mates. It worked just like peacocks with their long, bright tails. It's all about showing off for their love interests. At least, that's what researchers think. This discovery is huge because it's only the second Spinosaurus species we've ever found, like the one that starred in Jurassic Park 3. These guys were among the biggest terrestrial carnivores of the late Cretaceous period. That is, meat-eating dinosaurs that lived about 100 to 66 million years ago. They were as huge and fierce as the famous T-Rex. For a long time, most people thought Spinosaurus were aquatic hunters, and we pictured this fierce monster stalking the shore or diving deep to hunt. Some research even suggests their long spines on the tail were basically built-in flippers. But that's not what most scientists believe anymore. New studies show that while the paddle-like tail looks great for swimming, it didn't actually have much muscle. It turns out those tails were likely just for show, kind of like a lizard tail. They just didn't have the power to push such a massive creature through the water. The density of their bones didn't help either. The bottom line is, they wouldn't have been terrible swimmers. They were super slow and couldn't really dive. To give you an idea, if we put this dinosaur next to a crocodile in a pool for a swimming competition, the crocodile would win every single time. Whether they were swimmers or not, scientists seem to agree on one thing: these guys loved the sea. Most of their fossils were found along the North African coast. But then, the mirabilis species showed up and totally changed the game. These were found in the Sahara, where there isn't a drop of water in sight today. Back then, this spot was about 300 to 600 miles away from the nearest ocean. So what's the story here? Is this actually a Spinosaurus? Well, it sure is. And the way scientists actually tracked it down in the middle of the desert is pretty interesting. Because for over 70 years, the main clue was right there. Easy to find, but everyone missed it. Back in the 1950s, some French geologists were out in the desert looking for uranium. While they were searching, they stumbled upon these massive bones poking out of the sand at a place called Gadufawa. Nearby at another spot called Akarazeras, a geologist named Hugues Faure found a different fossil site. He found teeth that looked a lot like the ones from a Carcharodontosaurus, which was a massive carnivorous dinosaur. He wrote down one single line about it in his notes, and that was basically it. For some reason that nobody can explain, those notes just sat there. No one took them seriously or even bothered to go back to that site for decades. It wasn't until 2019 that a team led by Paul Sereno from the University of Chicago decided to finally follow that old lead. They basically turned it into a high-stakes treasure hunt. They headed out there, and a local Tuareg man led Sereno's team on motorbikes deep into the Sahara. He took them to a site called Djengwebe, where he remembered seeing fossilized bones a long time ago. Because it was such a long trek back to their main camp, the team didn't have much time. They could only grab a few fossils, mostly teeth and pieces of jaw bones, before they had to leave. At that moment, they had no idea they were holding a brand new species in their hands. The team finally headed back there in 2022, and this time, they found even more fossils. That's when they finally put together the 40-foot-long find. And then they were able to confirm three big things. First, this new creature had a really tall and unusual crest on its head. Second, the way the teeth were set was a bit different from its famous relatives. And then we come to the biggest difference of all. For the first time ever, we're seeing a Spinosaurus that lived far from the ocean. But that raises a big question. How did it eat fish? Scientists have a theory. All those bones were found buried in the sediments of an ancient river. That means this dinosaur probably hunted for fish in shallow water. It was big and strong enough to wade into water over 6 feet deep, but it probably spent most of its time in shallow water, just waiting for a big fish to swim by. But if it didn't feel like sushi dinner, it could just wander through the woods and pluck something else to eat. Okay, so you're probably a little confused right now. I'm talking about forests and rivers. But wasn't this thing found in the middle of a desert? Well, the thing is, the Sahara looked completely different back then. It was actually green. The whole landscape was full of rivers and forests while these dinosaurs were roaming around. So that pretty much solves that mystery. But there are still plenty of other questions about this species, like how big they actually were. See, the problem is that the bones we found belonged to a young dinosaur, not a full-grown adult. Estimates say that the creature was probably about 26 feet long when he lost his life, but he could have grown a whole lot bigger than that. That leads us to the second mystery. Because this dinosaur was so huge and looked so unique, scientists have been arguing for years about how much time it actually spent in the water. One theory is that they went through 3 big evolutionary phases. First, way back in the Jurassic period, they started developing these long, crocodile-like snouts. They were perfect for catching fish. Second, during the early Cretaceous, they really started running the show. They moved toward the sea and became the top predators along the ancient coastlines. The final phase happened right as the Atlantic Ocean was opening up. This is when they reached their record-breaking size. They basically became shallow water ambush specialists, sticking mostly to North Africa and South America. But their reign didn't last forever. Around 95 million years ago, there were abrupt changes in the climate and the sea levels increased a lot. Basically, that affected the habitat they lived in, pushing them to the brink. Eventually, their story came to an end. Unfortunately, these new fossils are only part of the puzzle. We still don't know the whole story about Spinosaurus. There might even be other species out there just waiting to be discovered. And to really understand these mysterious giants, we'll have to wait until we find more complete skeletons out in the field.
Now here's something. Baltic amber is one of the most common resins found in the world. The reason for this is that due to the vast forests of pine, their numerous deposits are so common, they provide wonderful treasures from long ago. Ants are especially common in the Baltic amber, which comes from pine trees. Its resin is rich in sugar, so the ants often live amongst the trees, close to the easy source of food. One block found in East Germany has preserved one ant that is estimated to be about 48 million years old. Think of the birthday cake. But what makes this find interesting is another animal inside the amber. It's a mite, notorious hunters in the insect world, capable of traveling at great speed. These guys quickly latch onto their hosts, sucking them dry. They're also capable of destroying entire hives in one go. And within this piece of amber, the amber provides a display of their final struggle. In Southeast Asia, feathers belonging to something unique have been found from 80 million years ago. They were captured in resin during the Cretaceous period, a peak time for dinosaurs. The many feathers inside are from the coelurosaur. It looks like a dinosaur, but this animal is more related to birds. Other feathers like this have been found in resin. They belong to avian and other non-flying dinosaurs. The discoveries have helped reimagine what dinosaurs actually look like. Still, dinosaurs may have had feathers instead of being completely bald. Of course, for most of them, the feathers weren't used for flying, but they helped the dinos stay warm. However, the feathers weren't all that was found, and a part of the coelurosaur's tail is also preserved. Still, it's so small and ancient that its DNA hasn't survived to map their entire genome. The enclosed tail is also very delicate, and it can't be removed from its protective amber shell. But although these findings can only be observed, they've still provided a great insight in the evolution of birds. But how does amber preserve things so effectively, even at the initial stages? The trees produce the resin to protect any small gaps in the bark against feeding insects. Its antiseptic nature and lack of water content ensures it doesn't degrade for a long time. This also makes it more resilient as it petrifies over long periods, eventually becoming a fossil. Some of the oldest amber ever found was from the Triassic period, showing how long it can last. The pieces from Italy are about 230 million years old. And inside one of these ancient droplets holds the oldest arthropod ever recorded. This mite found inside has provided a broader understanding to their evolution. Today, they're known to mainly annoy gardeners by feeding on the petals of flowering plants. However, at the time the mite was caught, flowers didn't have any petals, and it would be without this tasty meal for another 100 million years. Now, 100 million years ago, Myanmar was part of Gondwana, the great supercontinent. At that time, Myanmar wasn't part of Asia yet. But it was still lush with a great forest, which contained many species of lizards that lived amongst the undergrowth, hiding away from dinosaurs. Many of them have been stored within amber. This fact helped discover ancestors of geckos and chameleons. By using CT scans, scientists have analyzed them, providing a glimpse into the formation of their scales, teeth, feet, and claws. It also provided an understanding of how these archaic creatures once appeared. Although mostly pieces of lizards, by using modern technology, the scientists have been able to create 3D images of the lizard. These images can reveal how those guys appeared in their full form. The images show that they still retain some of their exact features to this day, like the chameleon's sticky pads used for climbing. A salamander fossil from around 20 million years ago is one of the most intact specimens ever found in amber. Details of its final moments show that it had been attacked before getting stuck in the resin. However, what's confusing about this find from the Miocene era is that the amber was found in the Caribbean, but it came from a tree that's closer related to those from East Africa. The lizard also has ancestry from the same area. Finds like this have opened a whole new understanding about how these small lizards migrated. It's expected that they would have ridden fallen logs, which took them across the seas to new homelands, not only to the Caribbean, but to all continents except for Antarctica. Nobody goes there, it's too cold. In the Dominican Republic, you can find some of the rarest of all ambers. This Dominican amber came from neotropical forests from around 20 million years ago. Many of the trees that made the resin are now extinct. The amber is almost completely see-through and can come in an array of beautiful colors. The most common colors are red, yellow, and even blue, and are easily mistaken for gemstones. One was found with a flea caught in it, dating to when the forest was at its peak and the mammalian variety thrived. Fleas were likely common at the time, and this flea in particular had recently fed on a mammal before getting stuck. However, something more intriguing was found within the flea. While scientists checked what mammal DNA was within the flea, they found that it was carrying an ancient bacterial blight. These blights have been constant throughout Earth's history, dramatically decreasing populations of animals and plants. This now extinct blight in the amber helped scientists determine how much the bacteria have evolved and how it spread. Now, most remnants of insects inside amber aren't much more than the exoskeleton bodies. But with some found in Myanmar, they were so well preserved that even the color of the insects is still intact. Colors in nature appear in three different ways. The first is bioluminescence, that's produced by a chemical reaction within a living organism. The second is about pigments, where the color appears in an animal or a plant tissue. The third is called structural coloration, and the production of colors here is explained by microscopic surfaces fine enough to react with the light. The rare insects in amber were found in the form of structural coloration, but only at specific wavelengths. It all explains the very intense colors rarely found. 99 million years later, these bugs can still show their vibrant colors – blue, purple, and green. Some of them appear so different in color and shape that they almost look like they're from another world. Which of course they are – a very old one. Ants have been around for about 168 million years, based on fossil evidence provided. They're well known for their social hierarchies and their hive mind system. They've dominated almost every corner of the insect world, but when these social capabilities came about have been difficult to determine. Yet, recently, amber dated from 100 million years ago has shed some light into their evolution. Several amber pieces have preserved various ant types, including the worker ants, guardian or soldier ants, and even a queen ant. Before these pieces were found, it was estimated their social nature occurred millions of years later. A piece of amber dated 100 million years ago helped shed light on the evolution of birds. A perfectly preserved bird that hatched preserved in amber was already equipped with its flight feathers. With the earlier physical abilities, they would be capable of moving around the nest by themselves at a very young age, and it's expected they could search for their own food almost immediately. But as birds continue to evolve and spend more time in the skies, their brain developed larger for their cognitive abilities. After hatching, their early development was then more focused on the brain, and the chicks slowly became more reliant on their parents over time. In Spain, a massive treasure trove of amber and other fossils has been found. Inside, there were remnants of an entire ecosystem that existed 110 million years ago. A bunch of individual fossils were found. The vast collection includes many types of insects, mollusks, arachnids, plants, 50 different dinosaur bone fragments, feathers, and hair from mammals, and a McDonald's burger wrapper. Nah, just kidding. With the abundance of findings, it's helped researchers understand the ancient terrestrial ecosystem that once existed. With loads of specific details of the environment, they've reconstructed the swamp. This way, it's now possible to experience what it was like in the world of dinosaurs.
Footsteps pounded behind him. Heart racing, he lunged toward the towering statue, fingers fumbling with the hidden crevice. No time. He shoved it inside just as shouts closed in. A deep breath, loud heartbeat. Then he ran, vanishing into the dark, leaving his secret buried in stone, waiting to be found. Throughout history, statues haven't just been silent guardians of the past. They've been hiding places for secrets, some deliberately sealed away, others stumbled upon by pure chance. See the most mysterious of them. In 2016, as Australian experts prepared a 645-year-old statue for auction, they uncovered a hidden secret, an ancient banknote tucked inside its hollowed head. Issued in 1371, under Emperor Zhu Yunzang, the note was worth 1,000 copper coins, or 28 grams of silver. More strikingly, it carried a grim warning. Despite passing through multiple owners, the hidden bill remained undiscovered for centuries. A rare relic from an era when paper money was still a novelty, the note was soon listed for auction, its journey through time continuing into the modern world. Statues became more than just symbols. They were guardians, keepers of history, and sometimes even life-saving tools. In 2017, restoration experts working on an 18th century statue in Spain made a remarkable discovery. Hidden within the statue's hollow interior were two letters written in 1777, providing insights into daily life, local customs, and the economy of the time. Similarly, in 2023, during renovations at the United States Military Academy in West Point, a box was discovered inside the marble base of a statue depicting the hero Tadeusz Kościuszko. Placed there nearly 200 years ago, this time capsule offers a tangible connection to the institution's storied past. The mystery surrounding statues and their potential to hide secrets extends to some of the world's most iconic monuments. Few places are as shrouded in mystery as the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, archaeologists, historians, and explorers have speculated about what might lie hidden beneath its massive limestone figure. Some people thought the Sphinx concealed the legendary Hall of Records, a supposed library containing ancient knowledge, possibly even lost wisdom from Atlantis. In recent years, advancements in ground-penetrating radar technology have revealed voids beneath the Sphinx, leading many to believe that the statue may hide undiscovered chambers or passageways, some possibly linked to royal tombs or hidden structures. The potential of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx has captivated imaginations for generations. But what is perhaps even more intriguing is the recent work done by researchers from New York University, who studied the environmental forces that shaped the Sphinx. After recreating ancient wind patterns, the researchers concluded that the Sphinx may have originally been shaped by natural erosion before humans further refined its form. Such revelations open up new avenues for understanding the monument's purpose, as well as the cultural and spiritual significance it held back then. The ancient Egyptians revered Sobek, the crocodile-headed god of power and the Nile, and often mummified crocodiles to honor him. These creatures were placed in temples or tombs as offerings to the gods or to ensure their safe passage to the afterlife. Recently, a group of researchers dove into an interesting study about a crocodile that received the mummification treatment from Egyptian embalmers. They used a CT scanner to uncover all sorts of fascinating details about how this crocodile met its maker and what happened to its body afterward. For the ancient Egyptians, animals weren't just pets, they were major players in their rituals, acting as a bridge between humans and the deities. Hawks, for example, were associated with Horus, the sun deity, since their flight brought them closer to the sun. Cats were linked to Bastet, the fierce and protective mother deity. Crocodiles were among the favorite animals for mummification. These reptiles were seen as symbols of Sobek, the lord of the Nile, whose presence announced the annual flooding that brought much-needed water and fertile soil for farming. In the past, studying such artifacts could mean damaging the mummy, but thanks to modern imaging techniques, the researchers were able to examine the crocodile while keeping it intact. X-rays and CT scans revealed that the crocodile's digestive system was packed with small stones called gastroliths, which crocs often ingest to aid digestion and maintain buoyancy. Amid those stones, they even found a metal fish hook and a fish. This suggests that large mummified crocodiles were likely caught in the wild using hooks baited with fish. This almost aligns with what ancient Greek historians wrote about life in Egypt. Almost because the Greeks believed that Egyptians used pigs to lure the crocodiles. So, as you've noticed, researchers and archaeologists use cutting-edge technology and meticulous hands-on work to uncover the secrets of ancient civilizations. The process begins with surveys using ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning to detect hidden chambers, tunnels, or anomalies beneath the surface. Once a promising site is identified, careful excavation begins. Layers of soil and debris are removed slowly, ensuring that no detail is lost. The exhibition of Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam features a remarkable 15th century Tibetan gilt copper statue of Guhya Samaja Akshobhaya. This figure, symbolizing the unity of opposing forces and a higher state of enlightenment, was previously unknown to the museum's collection. Recent examinations of this statue have revealed hidden relics and scrolls within its hollow structure, offering profound insights into the religious practices of the time. The exhibition showcases over 75 masterpieces from Asia, including the newly acquired Guhya Samaja Akshobhaya statue, highlighting the intricate craftsmanship and spiritual significance embedded within such artifacts. In the heart of Verona, a secret lay hidden for decades within the bronze statue of Juliet. Sculpted in 1969, she became a symbol of love, touched by countless visitors seeking romance and luck. But beneath her worn surface, Juliet was silently guarding something extraordinary. Over time, tiny cracks formed from years of affectionate caresses. Through them, lovers slipped letters, whispered confessions, desperate pleas, and eternal promises. Some tossed in keys, sealing their love with padlocks and hiding the proof inside her hollow frame. In 2014, restoration experts made a stunning discovery. As they worked to mend the statue, hundreds of love notes and rusted keys spilled out, forgotten vows locked away in the heart of Juliet herself. Statues often act as symbols of power and might. However, in more recent times, statues have also been used to convey messages for future generations. The concept of the time capsule, an object or collection of items placed in a container, sealed, and then buried or hidden for later discovery, has a long history. And in modern times, statues have served as the perfect vessels for these capsules, allowing people to communicate with future generations in a very tangible way. In 2014, as old workers carefully removed the golden lion atop Boston's Old State House for restoration, they made a startling discovery. Something rattled inside its hollow head. A Boston Globe article from 1901 had once mentioned a hidden time capsule, but over the years it had faded into legend. Then, a sculptor's descendant unearthed a long-forgotten letter confirming the truth. Inside the lion's head lay newspapers, photographs, autographs, and letters from Boston's past. Messages sealed away for over a century. As the capsule was opened, it felt like history itself was holding its breath. The officials planned to continue the tradition, adding modern artifacts before sealing the lion's secret once more, until the 22nd century unveils it again. We don't know if they carry on with it, though. Advancements in imaging technology have allowed researchers to uncover hidden details within famous sculptures without damaging them. In 2014, restoration experts in Mexico made a shocking discovery while examining a 300-year-old wooden statue. Real human teeth were hidden beneath its serene face. The revelation came not by sight, but by technology. When preservationists took an X-ray of the statue, expecting to find structural details, they instead saw a perfect set of teeth embedded in the mouth, unlike other historic statues from the region, which sometimes contained real hair people donated to the statues. This discovery was completely unexpected.
40,000 years ago, someone scratched a few tiny lines and dots onto a piece of bone, and that little mark might be the oldest hard drive humanity ever created. Scientists now believe those Ice Age people weren't just doodling, but recording real information. Structured, organized, repeatable data. And this discovery completely shifts the timeline of human intelligence. For decades, archaeologists kept finding strange symbols carved into Stone Age tools and sculptures. Those were simple shapes like crosses, dots, short lines, and tiny notches cut into bone or ivory. Explorers kept finding them in caves across Europe, including Germany, France, and Spain. They showed up on carved animal figurines, tools, and ornaments. Archaeologists dated them to be about 34,000 to 45,000 years old. That means people created these symbols during the Ice Age, when glaciers covered huge chunks of the planet, and mammoths still wandered the plains. For a long time, researchers believed these signs meant nothing in particular, maybe decorations, maybe tribal art. But a new computational study led by a linguist and an archaeologist showed it was more about data than decoration. The team analyzed more than 3,000 individual symbols carved into around 260 artifacts. They studied every mark and fed them into statistical models, the same type of mathematics researchers use to study language patterns or train artificial intelligence. The goal wasn't to translate the signs yet. Nobody knows exactly what they mean. Instead, the scientists looked at something called information density, which means how much meaningful data you can store in a sequence of symbols. When the researchers ran the numbers, they saw that the symbol sequences had almost the same information density as Proto-Cuneiform. That's the earliest writing system known from ancient Mesopotamia around 3000 BCE. It was roughly 40,000 years later. So, some signs in these Ice Age carvings repeat again and again in predictable ways: cross, 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 line, line, dot. That repetition resembles early data encoding, where patterns repeat because they store structured information. The researchers also analyzed the entropy of the coded messages. Entropy measures how unpredictable a sequence is. High entropy means lots of possible combinations, like a complex password. Low entropy means predictable repetition, and it looks like the Ice Age symbol systems have entropy levels very close to early Proto-Cuneiform tablets. That means the amount of information those carvings could store roughly matches the earliest writing records from the first cities. It proves that humans didn't just suddenly invent writing out of nowhere 5,000 years ago. Instead, humans spent tens of thousands of years experimenting with symbolic encoding systems and gradually increased their complexity until true writing was finally invented. One of the most interesting examples of such a coded message comes from a cave in southwestern Germany. Archaeologists discovered a tiny mammoth figurine carved from mammoth tusk ivory, small enough to fit in your palm. There's a neat row of engraved crosses and dots running along its surface. Another object, called the adorant, is a thin ivory plate. Found in a different German cave, has a strange mythical creature that looks part human, part lion on it. The figure stretches upward like it's worshipping something, and across its body, someone carved rows of tiny dots and notches with careful spacing. Then there's the famous lion-human sculpture. If you look at the arm closely, you can see evenly spaced cuts along the limb. These marks seem intentional, deliberate, almost rhythmic. They look less like decoration and more like entries in a ledger. It makes those artifacts something like USB drives made of ivory. And because these ancient USB drives appear in different regions of Germany and in other parts of Europe, it could mean that Ice Age humans may have shared such symbolic messages across huge distances. Those hunter-gatherers living thousands of miles apart probably recognized the same patterns scratched into bone tools. Of course, scientists still don't know the exact meaning of these symbols. They could represent seasonal calendars, migration cycles, clan markers, or some concepts tied to rituals. So the most important discovery for now isn't the translation, but the structure of the signs that behave like a system. This coding system isn't the only proof that ancient minds invented complex systems long before modern technology arrived. There's a thick oval slab of limestone in a museum in the Netherlands. Archaeologists dug it up in the late 1800s and assumed it was some kind of Roman game board. The problem was that nobody could figure out the rules. The carved lines didn't match any known ancient game. Only in 2026, researchers finally solved the mystery with help from artificial intelligence. If you look at the stone closely, you can see that certain grooves on it are slightly deeper than others. It means that people slid pieces across those lines repeatedly, and the stone wore down over time. Conservation experts created extremely detailed 3D scans of the limestone surface to analyze those wear patterns. Those scans showed differences in depth smaller than a human hair. Every tiny groove became a clue about how players once moved their pieces. Then, the team brought in a special AI game simulation system designed to understand board games. They fed the system rules from about 100 historical games and asked it to test possibilities onto a digital copy of the Roman board. The AI played thousands of simulated matches against itself and tried different rule combinations each time. For every rule set, it tracked where the pieces moved and compared those paths to the wear patterns on the real stone. It repeated this process around 1,000 times per rule set until finally certain patterns started lining up perfectly. The system narrowed all the possibilities to a small group of related blocking games. In this type of strategy game, two players move pieces along fixed paths, trying to trap the opponent's pieces in corners or dead ends. If you've ever played tic-tac-toe or checkers, you already understand the basic idea. To control space, predict the opponent's next move, and close the trap. The simulations showed that the Romans most likely played this game with small tokens made of glass, bone, or pottery sliding along those carved grooves. And that discovery matters more than you might think. Historians used to believe blocking games appeared in early medieval Europe, centuries after the Roman Empire collapsed. But this limestone board showed them that such games existed nearly 1,000 years earlier. So, Roman players had strategy games that helped them develop forward planning, recognizing patterns, and thinking of different combinations and possibilities. Now let's travel even further back in time, long before Roman cities and writing of any kind. Our destination, Olduvai Gorge in northern Tanzania, one of the oldest important archaeological sites on Earth. In 2025, researchers studying the area found something unexpected in ancient sediments. It was a set of tools made from the limb bones of elephants and hippos. And these tools date back about 1.5 million years. Scientists found 27 bone tools, some nearly 15 inches long, shaped into sharp blades. Early humans most likely used them on animal carcasses or to process tough materials. At first glance, they seem simple, but it actually looks like the toolmakers shaped these bones using knapping, the same process used to chip stone tools. Knapping means striking a material carefully so that small flakes break away, gradually forming a sharp edge. Bone behaves very differently from stone. It contains collagen, which makes it slightly flexible and elastic. Hit the bone too hard and it shatters unpredictably. Hit it too softly and nothing happens. That means whoever made these tools understood how the material worked. They adapted their technique to shape bone without destroying it. Archaeologists believe Homo erectus, an early human species with body proportions similar to ours, created these implements. It also looks like the toolmakers preferred thick limb bones, which are the strongest parts of animal skeleton. To make that choice, you need to understand anatomy and material strength. Engineers today still use that same logic when choosing materials for machines. When we put all these discoveries together, we see that our ancestors designed systems, invented technologies, stored information, and played complex games long before modern civilization appeared. So we didn't just suddenly become intelligent. We've been building knowledge for tens of thousands of years.
Well, get this. Scientists could bring Neanderthals back to life within the next 20 years. Not as fossils, not as simulations, but as actual living beings. And no, this isn't a sci-fi movie pitch, but a real debate happening right now in genetics labs and ethics panels around the world. The DNA has already been decoded, and the only thing standing between us and a living Neanderthal is whether we should do it, not whether we can. So let's get some things clear. Neanderthals weren't cavemen dragging clubs around as cartoons taught us. They were just like humans, our close cousins, who lived across Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They cared for injured members of their society, made tools, wore clothing, and survived scary Ice Age conditions that would wreck most modern humans. Then, around 35,000 years ago, they vanished. No one fully agrees on why. Changes in temperatures, competition with Homo sapiens, health issues, or interbreeding. All of it probably played a role. The reason this resurrection talk even exists is that scientists finished sequencing the entire Neanderthal genome back in 2010. It's like an instruction manual written in DNA, telling a body how to grow, function, and survive. Now, once you have that manual, the question shifts from what were Neanderthals like to could we rebuild one? This is where CRISPR enters the story. It's a gene editing tool that works like molecular scissors. It lets scientists cut DNA at precise spots and replace sections with different genetic code. They already use it to study health conditions, edit embryos in animals, and even modify human stem cells in labs. Now, in theory, scientists could take human stem cells and slowly replace modern human DNA with Neanderthal DNA, piece by piece. One famous geneticist from Harvard says it could happen within a couple of decades. He doesn't mean that copying a Neanderthal straight from a fossil, because ancient DNA is too damaged for that. Instead, his idea is to take human DNA and slowly change it piece by piece until it matches Neanderthal DNA. So it wouldn't be a copy from the past, but a modern human body rebuilt using Neanderthal instructions. Whoa! Scientists are willing to go through all that because they want answers to questions like why Neanderthals disappeared and we survived. How did their brains work compared to ours? Did they think differently, feel differently, or process language in unique ways? A living Neanderthal could answer questions that bones and fossils never can. Some researchers even think this could help modern medicine. Since Neanderthal genes influence immunity, metabolism, and inflammation, studying a full Neanderthal biology could reveal why certain conditions hit humans the way they do today. So, in a strange way, reviving them could help us. But all this excitement hits a wall made of ethics. A Neanderthal wouldn't just be a lab mouse, it would be a person. That single fact flips the entire project upside down. You can't treat a person like an experiment, even if science really wants answers. Being the only Neanderthal on Earth would be tough, to say the least. They'd have to live with no culture, no community, no one who would want to truly share their biology. They'd grow up surrounded by modern humans who would study them nonstop and forever label them as an experiment. So, critics of the idea are sure that kind of isolation could cause serious psychological damage. There's also the issue of consent, which the experiment would completely break. No Neanderthal can agree to being born into a modern world, raised by humans, studied for life, and used as proof of a theory. Consent is crucial in medical ethics, and you can't even test meds without it. Cloning a human ancestor would break that rule. Now, if we forget about ethics, there are also serious biological risks. No one knows how a reconstructed Neanderthal genome would behave in a modern human womb. Pregnancy alone could be dangerous. Development might not follow expectations. Immune reactions could go wrong. Even small genetic mismatches can cause massive problems when you're building a whole human from scratch, And even if everything worked out, the results might disappoint. One individual couldn't recreate Neanderthal society, and behavior comes from culture as much as DNA. Without a full population, the answers we get could be shallow, misleading, or incomplete. The debate on whether we should or should not bring back Neanderthals is so intense because the possibility of doing so is very real. Genetic engineering keeps accelerating, and the tools keep getting cheaper, faster, and more precise. Right now, no lab has approval to try this. No Neanderthal embryo exists. But scientists, ethicists, and state officials already argue about rules, limits, and red lines, which is another proof of how close it feels. It also brings up the big question of whether scientific curiosity has limits and who gets to decide them. Right now, there's no law that bans resurrecting extinct humans. Once one country allows it, others could follow, faster than the rules can keep up. And then, there are scientists who counter all this with a different argument. What if not doing it is also unethical? They point out that we already revive extinct animals, manipulate genomes, and alter life at the deepest level. Understanding Neanderthals could help modern humans survive future climate shifts or mass health disorders. If Neanderthals thrived in extreme conditions, their biology could hold survival clues we desperately need. From that perspective, if we refuse to explore this knowledge, it could cost the world many lives someday. If all this doesn't touch your heart at all because you have nothing to do with Neanderthals, here's a surprise for you. When you look in the mirror, you're probably staring at a tiny piece of one of them. It could literally be in your DNA. According to a study from a couple of years ago, Neanderthals didn't just vanish into thin air, but blended into us. Modern humans, whose ancestors migrated out of Africa, carry about 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA. Scientists only have a handful of high-quality Neanderthal genomes to study, just 3 really solid ones. They come from bones found in a cave in Croatia that are about 50,000 to 65,000 years old, plus 2 others from Eurasia dating to around 80,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's not a lot to work with, which means every new discovery matters a lot. Every person has 2 versions of each gene, one from mom and one from dad. When 2 very different groups mix, their offspring end up with more genetic variety. The scientists compared DNA from those 3 Neanderthals with genetic data from about 2,000 modern humans. What they found was shocking. Neanderthals themselves may have carried up to 3.7% modern human DNA. So Neanderthals weren't just mixing into us, we were mixing into them too. Roughly 1 out of every 30 Neanderthal parents may have been a modern human. And this didn't happen just once. The DNA shows at least 2 big periods of mixing. One happened around 200 to 250,000 years ago, and another around 100 to 120,000 years ago. There may have been more, but DNA is like a blurry photo. The older the event, the harder it is to see clearly. According to another recent study, most Neanderthal DNA in modern humans came from one long, intense mixing period about 47,000 years ago that lasted nearly 7,000 years. That's generations growing up together. This lines up with real bones, too. Scientists found skulls about 100,000 years old in Middle Eastern caves that look mostly like modern humans, but with thick brows and other Neanderthal-style features. Sadly, it looks like Neanderthals had a much smaller population than scientists thought. This makes it harder for them to stay genetically separate. As waves of modern humans kept moving out of Africa and mixing with them, Neanderthals didn't disappear, but dissolved into the larger human population. So, Neanderthals didn't lose the game of evolution. They're part of us. It's something worth keeping in mind when you think about the ethical side of bringing back one of them.
Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, Plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're all so valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof! He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this: Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies. Streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
Recently, mysterious oceans have yielded quite a few lost treasures. No, we're not talking about gold or pearls. It's something far more valuable. Near Sicily, divers found a 2,500-year-old shipwreck hidden just 20 feet below the surface. It's so ancient that experts aren't sure what it was made of. That takes us all the way back to the time full of political intrigue, conflict, shipbuilding, and discovery. But first, wait. The remains of the boat were only 20 feet below the surface? That's not deep at all. Almost every amateur diver could reach that depth. How could it stay hidden for 25 centuries? Well, the ship wasn't sitting out in the open like some movie prop. Over time, storms and shifting currents buried it under layers of sand and rock, disguising it as just another lump of seabed to anyone swimming above. The only reason it was discovered was the high-end scanning technology. Researchers basically played high-tech hide-and-seek using sonar to pick up straight lines and patterns that the sand had been hiding for centuries. The ship dates back to the 5th or 6th century BCE. Now back then, Sicily wasn't just an island known for Europe's tallest volcano, Mount Etna. It was one of the most important places in the Old World. Back then, the Mediterranean was the world's superhighway, and Sicily was the toll booth. The Greeks came in from the east, building colonies all along the coast. The Carthaginians pushed in from the west, fresh out of North Africa. Cities like Syracuse became powerful, while Carthage backed its own rival towns. This led to plenty of standoffs, alliances, and even some naval battles, since controlling Sicily meant controlling trade routes. Back then, trade was everything. Olive oil, wine, fancy ceramics, and metals. The Greeks and Carthaginians were competing for about 350 years. The mystery of the sunken ship only deepens. Was it a warship, a trader, or something else entirely? We don't know who built it or what the cargo was. Archaeologists aren't even sure what type of wood it was built from. That's how fragile and degraded it is. What they do know is that the hull was built using a super rare on-shell technique. Normally, ships start with the frame and then planks go on top. But not this one. The builders joined the planks edge to edge first, like a giant wooden puzzle, and added the ribs for support afterward. This method was only used for a short period in Greek shipbuilding, which makes the Sicily wreck an incredibly rare glimpse into some cool naval experimentation, which might also point to the ship's origin. But that's not the only thing. Divers also found several anchors nearby. 2 of them were iron anchors shaped like upside-down T's, which probably came from the 7th century CE, more than 1,000 years after the ship had sunk. This means that there is still more to uncover. The ship isn't some random lucky find. It's part of something called the Kawakana Project. It's a long-running digging into Sicily's underwater past that's been going on since 2017. The mystery ship might be the biggest catch so far, but the team is going on expeditions every year, discovering something new and significant. However, that's not the whole story. We have 3 more recent findings worth discussing. First up, let's head west across the Mediterranean to Spain, where an almost identical story played out. Off the coast of Murcia, archaeologists pulled out something incredible: a 2,600-year-old Phoenician ship called Marzaron II. Divers actually spotted it back in the 1990s, but instead of lifting it right away, the team decided to let it stay in place. Archaeologists often prefer to leave wrecks like that if they're stable and protected. Better to have an old shelf stable than to crumble it by moving it. Well, that worked until last year, when the sand started shifting, leaving the wreck exposed to waves, current, and decay. That's when archaeologists gave up and carefully lifted it plank by plank, like uncovering a dinosaur skeleton, only to piece it back together. However, here's the important part. Unlike most similarly old wrecks that crumble into pieces, Marzaron II is remarkably well preserved from bow to stern. The Phoenicians who built it were legendary sailors and traders. Long before Rome, these folks were cruising around the Mediterranean bringing cedar wood from Lebanon. They also traded glassware, wine, olive oil, and their priciest item, purple dye. It was so expensive that only the rich could get their hands on it. They might have been the first to use the North Star for sailing, letting them cross waters that others were too scared to sail. Now, let's jump continents to Africa, off the coast of Kenya. Here, archaeologists may have uncovered a wreck tied to one of history's most famous explorers, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese sailor who, in 1498, became the first European to reach India by sea. That single trip opened the direct spice trade route between Europe and Asia, making Portugal rich and powerful. The ship in question is believed to be the São Jorge, part of Vasco da Gama's famous final voyage. Records say it sank off the Kenyan coast during a storm, and the wreck divers found under coral reefs seems to be of the right era. If confirmed, it could be one of only 8 Portuguese ships from that time still resting in the Indian Ocean. It's like stumbling across one of the missing chapters of a book about the age of exploration. Unlike the Spanish wreck, this one hasn't been lifted out of the water. It's still lying there. Instead of hauling it up, they want to make the wreck a museum for divers. Sounds pretty awesome. That's the stuff that inspires you to pursue this hobby. If you think these finds only happen to professional archaeologists, well, you're wrong. Because the next discovery wasn't made by a team with advanced sonars and stuff. Nope, it was made by a dad and his 5-year-old daughter on a simple fishing trip in Wisconsin. What they found might be the George L. Newman, a wooden schooner that had been lost since 1871. That year, the ship ran aground in heavy smoke from the Peshtigo fire in Wisconsin, the deadliest wildfire in history. But it happened on the same day as the more famous Chicago fire, so we didn't hear about it. Anyway, for more than 150 years, everyone assumed the Newman had been lost forever. But moving sands revealed the remains right there beneath the shallow waters of Lake Michigan. It might not hold sailing secrets, but it's another time capsule, this time from American history. Anyway, to bring this story to a close, what was the oldest shipwreck ever discovered? Well, back in the 70s, some divers exploring near the Greek island of Dokos stumbled upon what turned out to be the oldest known shipwreck in the world. Unfortunately, the ship itself didn't make it. Everything made of wood, like the hull, as well as ropes, was long gone. But what remained was cargo. The seabed was scattered with hundreds of clay pots, vases, and other ceramic pieces, all from around 2700 to 2200 BCE. This era is known as the Early Hellenic period, a time when pyramids in Egypt were still under construction. Along with the ceramics, archaeologists found stone anchors and millstones. That's some of the first proof humans were trading by sea. So even though the Dokos wreck doesn't have intact planks or masts, it shows us something bigger. Humans were sailing and trading far earlier than many once believed. It's not treasure in the pirate sense, but in terms of history, it's priceless. In the end, it turns out the ocean is basically one giant storage unit for human history. Unlike what you can find underground, you know that there's a tragic story behind a ship sinking. These wrecks could tell us how people lived, traded, and traveled. And the best part? With today's underwater robots and scanning gear, we can explore the ocean in ways divers alone never could. There could be fleets of forgotten ships down there, each with a different tale about the civilization it came from. So, there's a mysterious doorway in the middle of Antarctica. Some people think it's Bigfoot's vacation home, or a shuttlecraft from Star Trek, or maybe a door to Agartha, a mythical kingdom some people believe is located in the center of the Earth. Well, the scientists debunked all these poetic theories and explained that what looks like a mysterious doorway is located in an area of fast sea ice. It's offshore of the coast and is full of little islands with shallow water around them. When ice flows around hard rocks hidden underneath, it can create patterns that look odd but are totally normal. In this spot, the ice is thin, so the rocks underneath have a big effect on how the ice moves. The cold winds in Antarctica also shape the ice and snow and make it look like they're lines and shapes. So, the mysterious doorway is just a rocky ridge poking out because the ice has melted a little. The top of the doorway is the tip of the rock, and the sides are snowy trails left by strong winds blowing in the same direction. It's essentially an iceberg that got stranded and is melting in one place. One YouTuber found another out-of-place mysterious object more than 150 miles off the shore of Antarctica, a 400-foot-long ice ship. The internet went wild with theories like that the ship must have ended up there right from the Bermuda Triangle. But there was no scientific proof that it was a ship and not just a large chunk of ice. And once some other internet users revisited the place, they noticed the ice melted in the summer and the hypothetical ship was gone. Another mysterious Google Maps find in Antarctica was a pyramid. And before you make up an exciting theory about how the ancient Egyptians built a secret base here, I have to tell you it turned out to be just a mountain. It's part of the tallest mountain range in Antarctica that stretches for almost 250 miles. It's not the first pyramid on this continent, as explorers from the British Antarctic Expedition found another unusually shaped mountain and nicknamed it the Pyramid. But this one didn't even have a pyramid shape. Here's one Antarctic find that definitely won't disappoint you: a giant ice shelf that reminded scientists of the Grand Canyon. A special submarine robot named RAN covered over 600 miles under the thick ice and brought back some amazing footage of icy mountains, valleys, flat plateaus, and swirly patterns made entirely of ice. One of the strangest things RAN found was giant bowl-shaped holes or scoops in the ice. Sadly, scientists lost track of the robot. They think that curious Wendell seals may have accidentally bumped into RAN and caused it to get stuck. To save energy, RAN probably shut itself down, and the scientists couldn't find it again. But the team is hoping to build a new robot and continue exploring this icy canyon to see how the patterns under the ice might change over the years. Another huge Antarctic canyon was found thanks to bad weather. A team of sound experts had to pause their work at the Casey Research Station in a storm. Instead of waiting around, they decided to use the unexpected free time to map the seafloor near Adams Glacier. And that's how they found a canyon that is almost 7,000 feet deep, almost 30,000 feet wide, and stretches over 28 miles away from the glacier. During the mapping, they discovered just part of the canyon before they had to go back to the research station. But when bad weather came in again, the ship went back and mapped more of the canyon. They were working in waves up to 13 feet high and super powerful winds, but they managed to get about 15 hours of data to complete their map. On the way back to Australia, they stopped one last time, and now they've got a full picture of the canyon. Studying it is helping scientists learn more about the history of glaciers and the interaction between the Antarctic ice sheet and the ocean. Now, there's a frozen lake in Antarctica called Lake Enigma. For a long time, people thought the lake was completely frozen solid. But during one expedition, researchers found that under the thick ice, there was a layer of liquid water about 40 feet deep. To learn more, they drilled through the ice and sent down a camera to explore what was hiding in the lake's depths. The lake's water, which they think comes from the nearby Amorphous Glacier through a secret underground pathway, was filled with strange microbial life. These tiny microbes lived in mats that covered the lake bed. Some of the mats were thin and spiky, and others looked like crumpled carpets, or even small tree-like shapes that grew up to 16 inches. Many of the microbes could make their own food through photosynthesis, just like plants do, and it gave the lake a high amount of oxygen. One of the coolest discoveries was a type of microbe which usually lives in low-oxygen places. Lake Enigma might be similar to environments on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, so it could mean that these moons also have hidden water under their ice and possibly microbial life too. One more mind-boggling discovery from Antarctica is tiny pieces of amber in mudstone, found here for the very first time. It took scientists years of studying incredibly well-preserved fossilized roots, pollen, and spores that they found back in 2017. Amber proves that resin-producing trees once grew in Antarctica, part of a lush rainforest that existed near the South Pole during the mid-Cretaceous period. Back then, disclaimer, I wasn't around then, the trees would have had to survive through months of darkness during the long Antarctic winters. Scientists believe they adapted by going dormant for a long time. The amber pieces the scientists found are tiny, but they are beautiful shades of yellow and orange with bumpy surfaces that show how the resin flowed out of the trees. This resin likely leaked out to protect the trees from insects. It was preserved because water quickly covered it and kept it safe from sunlight and air. A scientist was browsing through satellite images for brown trails of penguin waste and found 4 new colonies of emperor penguins at the base of the globe. These new colonies likely have been around for years, though 3 of them are rather small, with fewer than 1,000 breeding penguins each. One of the new colonies was found close to a place called the Lazarev Ice Shelf, where there used to be a larger penguin colony. They thought this colony went extinct in 2019, but it seems the penguins have just moved a bit because of changing sea ice conditions. So studying them can help us learn more about how emperor penguins adapt to changes in the environment. Now, there used to be a giant river system in Antarctica 40 million years ago. Researchers found proof of it after studying soft sediments and hard rocks from the frozen seabed. They looked at tiny bits of radioactive elements, like uranium and lead, and learned that the deeper dirt came from the time of dinosaurs. The dirt closer to the surface was younger and had an interesting pattern, like the kind you see in river deltas today, such as in the Mississippi River or Rio Grande. Scientists found tiny signs of life in the sand. The river that once flowed here started in the Trans-Antarctic Mountains and traveled 930 miles before it reached the sea. Researchers kept studying newer layers of dirt from about 20 million years ago,